My son thought his wife was 4,000 miles away, sipping coconut water on a white sandy beach in Aruba. He had even shown me the photos she sent him that morning. Selfies with the turquoise ocean in the background and a caption about finding her inner peace. But I knew that was a lie because I was looking right at her custom white Porsche Cayenne parked in the executive lot of his company in downtown Chicago. The engine was cold, the windows were tinted, but there was no mistaking that scratch on the passenger door from when she hit my mailbox last Thanksgiving and never apologized. She was supposed to be gone for 7 days, so why was her car here, and why did I have a feeling in my gut that turned the chicken stew I was holding into a heavy stone? As I walked past the meeting room, I caught part of a conversation through the frosted glass. What I heard made my skin crawl, and I realized that my son was not just being cheated on, he was being hunted. Before I continue this story, please like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I always enjoy reading about where my stories travel. My name is Enoch Freeman. I am 69 years old. To the world, and even to my own son, I am just a retired old man who drives a rusted 2012 Ford pickup truck and wears flannel shirts that have seen better days. I live in a small house in the suburbs. I spend my days fishing or cooking, and I avoid technology because I say it hurts my eyes. That is the version of me they know. What my son Terrence does not fully understand, and what his wife Victoria definitely does not know, is who I used to be. For 30 years, I was not just a desk clerk. I was a forensic auditor for the Internal Revenue Service. My job was not to look at numbers. My job was to look at the lies hidden between the numbers. I hunted tax evaders, money launderers, and corporate thieves who thought they were smarter than the system. I learned to read a balance sheet like a crime scene. I learned that the devil is not in the details. The devil is in the missing details. I retired 5 years ago, or so I said. In reality, I still consult for private firms under a pseudonym, but I keep that quiet. I wanted Terrence to build his own logistics company, Freeman Freight, without standing in my shadow. I wanted him to feel the pride of a self-made man. So I played the role of the simple, supportive father. I brought him lunch. I nodded when he explained basic business concepts to me as if I were a child. I let him believe he was the shark in the family. But sharks have to keep moving to survive, and Terrence had stopped moving the day he married Victoria. It was a Tuesday afternoon, gray and windy, typical for Chicago in late autumn. I had made a large batch of my special spicy chicken stew. Terrence loved it, and I knew he had been working late nights recently. I decided to drive into the city to surprise him. I did not call ahead. I liked the element of surprise. It was an old habit from my auditing days. You learn more about people when they do not know you are coming. I pulled my truck into the visitor's lot of the industrial park, where Freeman Freight occupied the entire 3rd floor. The company was doing well. Terrence was a brilliant engineer, good at logistics, good at systems. But he was blind when it came to people. He saw the best in everyone, a trait he inherited from his mother, God rest her soul. I, on the other hand, saw the cracks. I grabbed the Tupperware container and walked toward the building entrance. That was when I saw it. Spot number 4. The spot reserved for the chief marketing officer. Victoria. It was impossible to miss. A white Porsche Cayenne with custom rims. I stopped in my tracks. My mind immediately went to the conversation I had with Terrence 2 days ago. He had been so excited for her. She is so stressed, Dad, he had told me. She needs this girl's trip to Aruba. A wellness retreat. No phones, no email, just yoga and meditation for a week. He had driven her to the airport himself on Sunday morning. He had watched her walk toward the security checkpoint. So why was her car here? I walked over to the vehicle. I wiped a layer of city dust off the license plate. Vicky F. It was her. I crouched down and looked at the passenger door. The long, jagged scratch was there, the one she refused to fix because she said the body shop could not match the pearlescent paint perfectly. My first instinct was to call Terrence. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, but my thumb hovered over his name. If I called him, he would ask questions. He would make excuses. He would say I was mistaken, or worse, he would call her, and she would have time to come up with a lie. Victoria was quick. She was a marketing genius, after all. She knew how to spin a narrative. No, I needed to know what was happening before I opened my mouth. I put the phone away. I walked to the side entrance of the building. Most people used the main glass doors with the biometric scanners, but there was a service door near the loading docks that used the old keycard system. When Terrence first bought this building 3 years ago, I had helped him review the security contracts. I had kept a master keycard, mostly for emergencies, or in case I locked myself out while bringing him dinner. He had probably forgotten I even had it. I tapped the card against the reader. For a second, I thought it might have been deactivated. Then, the light turned green and the magnet clicked. I slipped inside. The hallway smelled of cardboard and industrial cleaner. It was quiet. Most of the drivers were out en routes, and the administrative staff usually left by 5. It was now almost 6. I bypassed the elevator. Elevators have cameras, and elevators make noise. I took the stairs. 3 flights. My knees protested with every step, a sharp reminder of my age, but I pushed through the pain. I needed to be a ghost. When I reached the 3rd floor, I cracked the stairwell door open. The office lights were dimmed, set to energy-saving mode. The open-plan workspace was empty, rows of monitors sleeping in the dark. But down the main corridor, light spilled out from under the door of the main conference room, the room with the frosted glass walls. I heard voices. I moved closer, my sneakers silent on the commercial carpet. I hugged the wall, staying in the shadows. I was not Enoch the father anymore. I was Enoch the auditor, moving toward the discrepancy. I recognized the first voice immediately. It was sharp, impatient, and devoid of the sweetness she always used when Terrence was in the room. Victoria. "Stop whining and sign the authorization, Gavin," she said. "We don't have time for you to grow a conscience." Gavin. That would be Gavin Miller, the chief financial officer, a man Terrence had hired a year ago on Victoria's recommendation. He was a nervous man, sweaty and pale, always looking like he was waiting for a heavy object to fall on his head. "I don't know, Vic," Gavin's voice trembled. "This is a lot of money. The quarterly audit is coming up next month. If Terrence sees these transfers, he's going to know. You can't hide a $2 million outflow to a vendor that doesn't exist." I froze. I pressed my back against the wall, holding my breath. $2 million. "Terrence isn't going to see anything," Victoria snapped. I could hear the click of her heels pacing the room. "Terrence is currently sitting at home, looking at the deep fake photos I scheduled to auto-send from my cloud account. He thinks I'm currently getting a hot stone massage. The idiot sent me a text message telling me to soak it all in. He has no clue." She laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "But the audit," Gavin insisted. "There won't be an audit, Gavin." Victoria's voice dropped to a hiss. "By the time the auditors get here, this company will be a shell. We move the liquid assets to the Cayman accounts tonight. We leverage the property for the hard money loan on Thursday. By Friday, we file for bankruptcy protection. And when the dust settles, it will look like gross mismanagement by the CEO." I felt the blood drain from my face. They weren't just stealing, they were framing him. They were going to destroy my son's reputation, his credit, his life work, and leave him holding the bag for millions in debt. "I set up the paper trail perfectly," Victoria continued. "All the approvals for the bad investments were sent from Terrence's terminal. I used his login while he was sleeping. When the SEC starts looking, they're going to see a CEO who made reckless bets and tried to cover them up. You and I? We'll just be the horrified executives who tried to stop him." "And if he fights it?" Gavin asked. "Let him fight," Victoria scoffed. "He's weak. He's soft. He worships the ground I walk on. Even when the walls are falling down, I'll tell him it's a mistake, that we can fix it, that he needs to sign just one more thing to save us. And he will sign it, because he trusts me. And once he goes down, I file for divorce, take half of whatever personal assets he has left, and we disappear." My hand gripped the Tupperware container so hard the plastic lid cracked. The smell of spicy chicken wafted out, but I didn't care. I wanted to kick that door open. I wanted to storm in there and grab Gavin by his cheap tie and throw Victoria out the window. I wanted to scream that I was Enoch Freeman, and I had put men in federal prison for less than this. But I stopped myself. I took a deep breath. In my years at the IRS, I learned that anger is a liability. Anger makes you impulsive. If I burst in there now, what would happen? They would deny it. They would say I was a crazy old man hearing things. They would destroy the evidence. They would claim the transfers were legitimate business strategy. Victoria would spin a story to Terrence that his father was losing his mind, that I was jealous, that I was attacking her. And Terrence, my sweet, naive son, he would believe her. He loved her. He was blind to her faults. If I forced him to choose between his wife and his father right now, without hard proof, he might choose her. And then I would lose him, and he would still lose everything. No, I could not fight this with fists. I could not fight this with accusations. I needed evidence. Hard, undeniable, forensic evidence. I needed to track the money. I needed to find the shell companies. I needed to record their confessions. Just do it, Gavin, Victoria said, her voice final. Initiate the first transfer. 500,000. Test the waters. If the bank doesn't flag it by morning, we drain the rest. I heard the typing of a keyboard, then a heavy sigh from Gavin. It's done, he said. It's pending approval. Good, Victoria said. Now pour me a drink. Being in the Caribbean is exhausting work. I stepped back from the door. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I retreated down the hallway, moving backward until I reached the stairwell. I eased the door open and slipped inside. I walked down the 3 flights of stairs, my mind racing faster than my feet. I didn't feel the pain in my knees anymore. I felt a cold, sharp clarity. I exited the building and walked to my truck. The wind had picked up, biting at my face. I placed the chicken stew on the passenger seat. My son wouldn't be eating tonight. I sat in the driver's seat and looked up at the 3rd floor window. I could see the faint glow of the conference room light. They thought they were the predators. They thought Terrence was a sheep, and I was just an old, useless shepherd who had lost his teeth. They had no idea. I started the engine of my old Ford. It rumbled to life, a low, angry growl. I drove home, but I did not go to sleep. I went into my study, a room I usually kept locked. I moved the pile of fishing magazines off my desk. I dusted off my old laptop, a machine that looked clunky, but was encrypted with military-grade software. I pulled out my external hard drives. I sat down and cracked my knuckles. Victoria wanted to play a game of numbers. She wanted to create a paper trail. Well, she was about to learn that paper trails work both ways. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was the auditor, and I was about to conduct the most thorough investigation of my life. The next morning, I drove to Terrence's house. I needed to see how deep the deception went. I needed to see if my son was salvageable or if he was too far gone. I found him in his kitchen, making coffee. He looked tired but happy. "Hey, Dad," he said, surprised to see me so early. "Everything okay? You didn't come by last night." "I got tired," I lied smoothly. "Fell asleep early. How are you holding up? House must be quiet without Victoria." Terrence smiled, a big, goofy, love-struck smile that made my chest ache. He pulled out his phone. "She's having a great time, Dad. Look at this." He tapped the screen and held it out to me. It was a photo of Victoria. She was wearing a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses, holding a coconut with a straw in it. Behind her was a pristine blue ocean and white sand. The caption read, "Finding my center. Miss you, baby." "Beautiful," I said. "When did she send this?" "About 20 minutes ago," Terrence said. "She said the Wi-Fi is spotty on the beach, so we can't talk much, but she's sending updates." I adjusted my glasses and leaned in closer to the phone. I wasn't looking at Victoria's smile. I was looking at the shadows. In the photo, the shadow of her hat was falling directly across her face, downward and slightly to the left. Based on the position of the sun in Aruba at 9 in the morning, the shadows should have been long and stretching to the west. But these shadows were short and sharp, like it was noon, or like she was standing under a studio light. Also, if you zoomed in on the reflection in her sunglasses, you didn't see the horizon. You saw a distortion, a blur. "That's a nice picture," I said, keeping my voice even. "Although, it's strange." "What is?" Terrence asked, pouring milk into his coffee. "The sun," I said. "In Aruba, right now it's the same time zone as us. But the shadows in this picture look like it's midday. And isn't that—" I pointed to a tiny detail in the corner of the frame, a pixelated green blur. "That looks like an exit sign. Do they have standard commercial exit signs on the beaches in Aruba?" Terrence frowned. He pulled the phone back and looked at it. "Dad, you're overanalyzing it. It's probably just a filter or something. Or maybe she took it yesterday and just uploaded it." "Maybe," I said. But Terrence, are you sure she went? I drove past your office yesterday evening. I could have sworn I saw her car in the lot. The air in the kitchen changed instantly. Terrence set his mug down hard. Coffee sloshed over the rim. "Dad, stop," he said, his voice tight. "Don't start this again." "Start what?" "The paranoia," Terrence snapped. "You've never liked Victoria. You've always looked for reasons to distrust her. She is my wife. She is in Aruba. I dropped her off. I saw her walk into the terminal." "Did you see her get on the plane?" I asked gently. "Of course not. Security doesn't let you do that anymore. Why are you doing this?" "Because I saw the car, son. White Porsche, scratch on the door, spot number 4. "It wasn't her car," Terrence shouted. "It was probably someone else's." "Do you know how many white Porsches are in Chicago? Or maybe Gavin drove it. Sometimes she lets him use it for client meetings if his car is in the shop." He was making excuses for her. He was doing exactly what Victoria said he would do. He was fighting for the lie because the truth was too painful. "Okay," I said, raising my hands in surrender. "Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just an old man with bad eyes. Forget I said anything." Terrence let out a breath and rubbed his temples. "I'm sorry," I yelled. Work is stressful right now. We're bleeding cash and I can't figure out why. Victoria says it's just the market cycle, but I feel like I'm missing something." "You are missing everything," I thought. "Why don't you call her?" I suggested. "Just to say hello, see her face." "She said the signal is bad," Terrence muttered, but he picked up the phone anyway. He dialed her on FaceTime. It rang, and rang, and rang. "See," he said, "she's probably meditating." But then the screen connected. Victoria's face filled the screen. She looked exactly like the photo. Hat, sunglasses, perfect skin. Behind her, I could see the blue water and hear the sound of waves crashing. "Hey baby," she chirped. "I barely have a bar of signal. Can you hear me?" "I can hear you," Terrence said, his shoulders relaxing. "Dad is here. He was worried about you." Victoria's smile faltered for a microsecond. "Oh? Hi, Enoch. Why the worry?" "I thought I saw your car at the office," I said, leaning into the frame. "Just wanted to make sure you made it to paradise." "You're so funny, Enoch," she laughed, but her eyes behind the sunglasses were not laughing. "My car is in the garage at home. You must be seeing things." "Must be," I said. "Listen, honey, I have to go," Victoria said to Terrence. "The group session is starting. Love you." "Love you too," Terrence said. She hung up. Terrence looked at me with triumph. "Satisfied? She's on the beach. You heard the ocean." I looked at my son with profound sadness. He heard the ocean, but I had heard something else. Just before she hung up, in the background noise of her beach, I heard a distinct, two-tone siren. A siren that rose and fell in a specific minor third interval. It was the siren of a Chicago Fire Department ambulance. They use a specific type of air horn and electronic siren mix that is unique to this city. I had heard it every day for 40 years. They don't have Chicago ambulances in Aruba. She was using a green screen app, a deep fake background. It was clever technology, but audio doesn't lie if you know what to listen for. "I'm satisfied," I lied to my son. "I'm glad she's safe." I realized then that I couldn't save Terrence by telling him the truth. He wouldn't listen. I had to let him hit the wall. I had to let him feel the crash. But I would be there to catch him, and I would be there to destroy the people who pushed him. "I'm going to head home, son," I said. "I have some puzzles to work on." "Okay, Dad," he said, turning back to his coffee, dismissing me as the confused old man. I walked out to my truck. I didn't go home. I drove to the nearest electronics store and bought a high-powered directional microphone and a GPS tracker. If Victoria wanted to play spy games with fake backgrounds and shell companies, she was about to learn that she was playing against a grandmaster. I spent that night on my laptop. I didn't sleep. I logged into the public records database. I started with the name Gavin Miller. I cross-referenced his address history with Victoria's maiden name. Bingo. They hadn't just met a year ago when she recommended him for the CFO job. They had attended the same business school in Pennsylvania 10 years ago. They had lived in the same apartment complex. This wasn't a new affair. This was a long con. I pulled up the corporate filings for Freeman Freight. I looked for the recent vendor additions. I found 3 new LLCs registered in Delaware in the last 6 months. Apex Solutions, Blue Horizon Logistics, and Veritas Consulting. I ran the registered agent names. They were generic legal services. But then I dug deeper. I looked at the metadata on the PDF filings for these companies. The author of the documents wasn't a lawyer. The author was listed as VM Personal. Victoria Miller? No, her maiden name was Moore. But Gavin's last name was Miller. I searched marriage records in Pennsylvania from 10 years ago, and there it was. A marriage license for Gavin Miller and Victoria Moore. No divorce record found. She wasn't just cheating on my son, she was a bigamist. She was still legally married to the CFO. They were a husband and wife team of grifters, dismantling my son's company from the inside out. I sat back in my chair, the glow of the screen illuminating the dark room. They had made a fatal mistake. They assumed Enoch Freeman was nobody. They assumed because I drove a truck and ate stew, I was stupid. They were about to find out that the IRS never closes a file until the debt is paid, and their debt was going to be expensive. I drove back to my son's house the next morning with a heavy heart and a folder of printed documents sitting on the passenger seat of my truck. The marriage license I had found the night before was burning a hole in the leather upholstery. It was a smoking gun. It proved Victoria was a bigamist and a fraud. But as I pulled into Terrence's driveway, I hesitated. My years in the IRS taught me that presenting evidence too early can backfire. If the subject is emotionally compromised, they will reject the facts to protect their reality. Terrence was not just a victim. He was a man in love, and a man in love will rationalize anything. If I walked in there and slammed a marriage certificate on his table, he would say it was a clerical error. He would say it was a different Victoria Moore. He would call her, and she would spin a web of lies that would make me look like a senile old fool trying to destroy his happiness. I needed him to see the cracks himself first. I needed him to doubt. I left the folder in the truck. I walked up to the front door and let myself in with the spare key he kept under the mat. Terrence was in the living room. He was pacing back and forth, holding his phone, a wide grin plastered on his face. He looked like a teenager who had just received his first love letter. "Dad, look at this," he said the moment he saw me. He didn't even ask why I was back so early. He shoved the phone in my face. It was another photo. This one was even more elaborate than the coconut selfie from yesterday. It showed Victoria standing on a balcony, wrapped in a white silk robe, overlooking a sprawling resort complex. The ocean was a deep, impossible blue behind her. Palm trees swayed in the wind. The caption read, "Morning yoga view. Wish you were here." I took the phone from his hand. I adjusted my glasses. I did not look at her smile. I looked at the data. I studied the image with the eyes of a man who had spent 3 decades spotting forged signatures and altered receipts. The first thing I noticed was the light. In the photo, the sun was high and bright, casting short, sharp shadows directly downward. I glanced at my watch. It was 9 in the morning in Chicago. Aruba is in the Atlantic Standard Time Zone, 1 hour ahead of us, so it was 10 in the morning there. At 10 in the morning, the sun should be in the east, casting long shadows toward the west. But in this photo, the shadows under the balcony railing fell straight down. That lighting condition happens at noon. I zoomed in on the hem of her robe where it met the balcony railing. There was a faint, almost imperceptible blur, a halo of pixels. It is a common artifact when an image is superimposed over a background using a green screen or an AI filter. Her hair, which should have been blowing in the wind she claimed was so strong yesterday, was perfectly still, yet the palm trees in the background were bent almost double. The physics did not match. "Terrence," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "This photo, did she send this just now?" 2 minutes ago, he beamed. "She said she just finished her session." I looked closer. There was a reflection in the glass of the sliding door behind her. It was small, but it was there. In the reflection, I didn't see the ocean. I saw a gray ceiling tile, the kind you see in an office building. "Son," I said gently, "look at the reflection in the door." He leaned in, squinting. "What about it?" "That is a drop ceiling, Terrence. Resorts do not have office ceiling tiles on their balconies. And look at the shadows. It is 10 in the morning in Aruba. These shadows are from noon." Terrence snatched the phone back. His smile vanished, replaced by a flash of irritation. "You are doing it again, Dad. You are picking everything apart. It is probably just the angle. Or maybe she took it later in the day yesterday and sent it now. Why do you have to ruin everything?" "I am not trying to ruin anything," I said. "I am trying to tell you that this is not a photo of a woman in the Caribbean. This is a composite. It is a fake." Terrence let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "A composite? You think my wife is photoshopping herself into a resort? Do you hear yourself? You sound crazy. You sound like those conspiracy theorists on the internet." "I am a forensic auditor, Terrence," I snapped, losing my patience. "I detect fraud for a living." "You retired 5 years ago," he shouted. "You drive a truck that barely runs. You spend your days fishing. You don't know anything about modern technology. You don't know about filters or cloud uploads. You are just an old man who is lonely and jealous because I have someone and you don't." The words hit me like a physical blow. Jealous. He thought I was jealous of the woman who was currently draining his bank accounts and laughing at him with her other husband. "I am trying to protect you," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous low. "Protect me from what? From my wife? From the only person who actually supports me right now?" Terrence paced the room, running his hands through his hair. "You have no idea what kind of pressure I am under, Dad. The business is struggling. I have vendors calling me about invoices I thought were paid. I have cash flow problems I can't explain. Victoria is the only one keeping me sane. She is the only one telling me it is going to be okay. And you come in here and tell me her vacation photos are fake?" He was spiraling. The stress was eating him alive, and he was clinging to Victoria like a life raft, not realizing she was the anchor dragging him down. "Call her," I said. "What?" "Call her, right now. If she is on that balcony, ask her to wave. Ask her to show you the view in real time." "I am not going to interrogate my wife," Terrence spat. "If you don't call her, I will go to the police and file a missing person report," I bluffed. "Because if that photo is fake, then she is missing, and I will have them ping her phone." Terrence stared at me with pure hatred. He hated me in that moment because I was forcing him to look at the thing he refused to see. "Fine," he hissed. "I will call her. And when she answers, and when she shows you the beach, I want you to leave. I want you to get out of my house and not come back until you apologize." He tapped the screen. He put it on speaker and held it up so we could both see. The phone rang. It rang for a long time. I saw the doubt flicker in Terrence's eyes for a second, but he stamped it down. Then the connection clicked. The video feed opened. Victoria was there. She was wearing the same white robe. She was sitting in a white chair. The background was the ocean, moving and shimmering. "Hey, sweetie," she chirped. Her voice was bright, but her eyes were darting side to side. "Is everything okay? You usually don't call twice in a row." "Hey, Vic," Terrence said, his voice shaking slightly. "I am sorry to bother you. My dad is here. He is worried. He thinks something is wrong." Victoria looked at the camera. Her expression shifted from sweet to condescending in a heartbeat. "Oh, Enoch, still playing detective? I am sitting right here. Look at the water. It is beautiful." She moved the phone slightly. The background moved with her, but the perspective was off. The horizon line did not shift naturally. It was a flat image behind her, a digital backdrop. "Show us the balcony," I said from behind Terrence. "Stand up and walk to the railing." Victoria laughed, a nervous, tinkling sound. "I am not getting up, Enoch. I am relaxing. That is the point of a vacation. Why are you being so aggressive?" "Because I don't believe you are in Aruba," I said. Terrence turned on me. "Stop it, Dad. She is right there," Victoria sighed dramatically. "Terrence, baby, I can't deal with his negative energy right now. I am trying to heal. I am trying to get strong so I can come back and help you with the company. Please, just get him out of there." I was about to speak, to point out the lack of wind on her face, despite the moving palm trees in the background, when I heard it. It was faint at first, bleeding through her microphone. A background noise that her noise-canceling software failed to filter out completely. It started low and climbed to a piercing high pitch before dropping again. Wee-woo. Wee-woo. It wasn't the rhythmic crash of waves. It wasn't a seagull. It wasn't the wind. It was a siren. But not just any siren. It was the distinct, dissonant wail of a Chicago Fire Department ambulance. Specifically, the older model still used by Battalion 4, which covered the downtown Loop area. I knew that sound better than my own heartbeat. I had worked in the federal building for 20 years. That siren echoed off the canyon walls of the skyscrapers in a very specific way. It had a metallic reverb that you do not get in an open space. You certainly do not get it on a beach in the Caribbean. I looked at Terrence. He didn't react. He heard noise, but his brain labeled it as generic interference. He didn't know the difference between a Chicago siren and an Aruban breeze. But Victoria knew. I saw her eyes widen a fraction of an inch. She reached out and muted her microphone for a split second, then unmuted it. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "Hear what?" Terrence said. "The siren," I said. "That was a Chicago ambulance." Victoria rolled her eyes. "It was the TV in the hotel room next door, Enoch. Someone is watching a movie." "God, you are insufferable." She looked at Terrence. "Honey, I have to go. My massage therapist is here. I will call you tonight. Don't let him upset you. I love you." "Love you too," Terrence whispered. The screen went black. Terrence lowered the phone. He turned to me, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "Get out," he said. "Terrence, listen to me," I started. "Get out!" he screamed. "You embarrassed me. You insulted her. You are losing your mind, Dad. You are seeing things that aren't there and hearing things that don't exist. I don't want you here." I looked at my son. He was trembling. He was terrified. Deep down, he knew something was wrong. He knew the photo was weird. He knew her reaction was defensive. But he was pushing it all down because if he acknowledged it, his whole world would crumble. He wasn't ready to be saved yet. He needed to fall. I realized that arguing with him now would only push him closer to her. He would call her back to apologize for my behavior, and she would use that opportunity to tighten her grip. She would tell him to sign the papers. She would tell him to transfer the money. She would use me as the villain to justify her urgency. I had to retreat. I had to let him think he had won. "Okay," I said quietly. "You are right. I am sorry. I am just an old man who worries too much. I will go." Terrence's shoulders slumped. He looked exhausted. "Just go, Dad, please." I walked out of the house. The sun was shining, but I felt cold. I got into my truck and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. She was in the city. She was likely in a hotel room or a rented office space downtown, probably within a few blocks of Freeman Freight. That siren was close. I didn't go home. I drove to a hardware store. I bought a prepaid burner phone and a set of high-powered binoculars. Then I drove to the city. I knew exactly where to start looking. There were only 3 hotels in the loop that had balconies with the specific angle to echo a siren like that, and only one of them was high-end enough for Victoria's taste, the Peninsula. I parked my truck 2 blocks away. I put on a baseball cap. I wasn't Enoch the father anymore. I wasn't Enoch the auditor. I was the hunter. And Victoria was about to find out that while she could fake a background, she couldn't fake the truth when it was standing in the lobby waiting for her. I did not sleep that night. Sleep is for people who have peace of mind, and I had none. I drove my truck back to my small suburban house, the one I had lived in for 40 years. It was dark and quiet, but inside my head, it was loud. The sound of that Chicago siren bleeding through Victoria's microphone played on a loop in my brain. It was the sound of a crime in progress. I walked into my study and locked the door. I pulled the blinds tight. I moved a stack of old fishing magazines and uncovered my safe. My hands did not shake. They were steady. I spun the dial, listened for the click, and opened the heavy steel door. Inside, next to my will and the deed to the house, sat my old laptop. It was a black Lenovo ThinkPad, thick as a brick and heavy enough to kill a man. My son Terrence laughed at it once. He told me I should get a tablet. He told me it belonged in a museum. I let him laugh. He did not know that this machine was air-gapped and loaded with proprietary forensic accounting software that I had kept updated every single week since I retired. I plugged it in. The fan whirred to life like a jet engine. The screen glowed blue. I cracked my knuckles. It was time to go to work. I am not a hacker. I do not break into firewalls or steal passwords. That is illegal and sloppy. I am an auditor. I use the greatest weapon in the world, public records. People think their secrets are safe because they are hidden in plain sight, buried under mountains of bureaucracy. But if you know where to dig, if you know which forms to pull and which databases to cross-reference, you can find the skeleton of any lie. I started with the names I had heard through the door: Apex Solutions, Blue Horizon Logistics, Veritas Consulting. I logged into the Delaware Division of Corporations. It is the first stop for anyone trying to hide money. I ran a search. There they were. All 3 LLCs were formed in the last 6 months. But Delaware allows anonymity. You do not have to list the owners. That stops most people. It does not stop me. I pulled the UCC1 financing statements. When a company takes out a loan or buys equipment, they file a uniform commercial code statement. It is public record. I searched for filings against Freeman Freight. I found dozens, but 3 stood out. They were liens filed by Apex, Blue Horizon, and Veritas against Freeman Freight's accounts receivable. They were claiming rights to my son's future income as collateral for consulting services rendered. I looked at the signature on the debtor's side. It was Terrence's signature, but it was too perfect. It was identical in every single instance. No human signs their name exactly the same way 3 times. The loop on the T was pixel perfect. It was a digital stamp. Someone had taken his signature and pasted it onto these documents. I looked at the creditor side. The representative for Apex Solutions was listed as VM Management. VM, Victoria Miller. I switched databases. I went to the Pennsylvania State Records, where I had found their marriage license. I searched for businesses registered to Gavin Miller. I found nothing recent. But then I searched for Victoria Moore. I found a dissolved entity from 10 years ago called Vicky's Ventures. The registered address was a small apartment in Philadelphia. I cross-referenced that address with Gavin Miller's credit header data from a skip tracing database I still had access to. Bingo! Gavin Miller had lived at that same address for 3 years. They were living together long before she met my son. I had the connection. Now I needed the money trail. I pulled the vendor payment history from Freeman Freight. I couldn't access their bank accounts directly, but as a former investor in the early days, I still had read-only access to the vendor portal that Terrence had set up years ago and never revoked. I scrolled through the ledger. It was a bloodbath. Every Friday for the last 4 months, a transfer of $45,000 went to Apex Solutions. Every Tuesday, $30,000 to Blue Horizon. They were bleeding him dry. They were keeping the transfers just under the $50,000 threshold that triggers an automatic internal review by the bank's fraud department. They were smart. But where was the money going? I took the EIN tax numbers for the shell companies and ran them through a global entity search. It is a tool we used at the IRS to track tax evaders. Apex Solutions was a subsidiary of a holding company called Island Breeze Holdings, registered jurisdiction, the Cayman Islands. I leaned back in my chair. The springs groaned. They weren't just stealing profit, they were liquidating the company. They were moving the capital offshore where U.S. courts couldn't touch it. By the time Terrence realized the money was gone, it would be sitting in a numbered account in Georgetown, and Victoria would be sipping a real coconut on a real beach while my son went to prison for bankruptcy fraud. I looked at the total amount transferred in the last 6 months. $1.2 million. My chest tightened. That was everything. That was the operating capital. That was the payroll. That was the maintenance fund for the trucks. Freeman Freight was insolvent. They were running on fumes. The only reason the checks hadn't bounced yet was because Terrence had excellent credit and a massive line of credit. But lines of credit run out. I rubbed my eyes. The screen was blurring. It was 3 a.m. I had enough to go to the police. I had enough to go to the FBI. But I knew how these investigations worked. They took months. They froze assets. They seized computers. If I called the feds now, they would shut Freeman Freight down. My son's reputation would be ruined. He would be the CEO under investigation. Even if he was cleared, the business would die. I needed to stop the bleeding without killing the patient. I needed to cut off their access. But then I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. In the list of recent filings, there was a new document recorded just yesterday at the Cook County Recorder of Deeds. It wasn't related to the business. It was personal. It was a deed of trust, a mortgage document. I clicked on it. The PDF opened slowly. The property address was 452 Oakwood Lane. My heart stopped. That was the house. That was the house I bought 30 years ago. The house where I raised Terrence. The house where my wife died. The house I had signed over to Terrence last year as a wedding gift because I wanted him to have equity. I wanted him to have security. I lived in a small rental now, happy that my son owned his childhood home free and clear. It was a symbol of my legacy. And now, there was a lien on it. I read the document. It wasn't a standard bank mortgage. It was a hard money loan. Private lender. Shark Fin Capital LLC. The loan amount was $2 million. The interest rate was 18%. And there was a confession of judgment clause. That meant if he missed a single payment, the lender could seize the house immediately, without a trial. I looked at the signature page. There was Terrence's signature again, that same perfect digital stamp. And below it, acting as the witness, Victoria Freeman. They had mortgaged his home. They had taken out a predatory loan against the only asset he owned outright. And the disbursement date was today. I checked the timestamp. The funds were scheduled to be wired to the borrower at 9 this morning. But the borrower account number listed on the document did not match Terrence's personal checking account. I knew his account number. It ended in 4490. This account ended in 8821. I ran a quick check on the routing number. It was an account at a bank in Miami. They were stealing the house equity, $2 million. They were going to wire it to Miami, then to the Caymans, and leave Terrence with a $2 million debt at 18% interest on a house he no longer really owned. I stood up. My chair fell backward and hit the floor with a crash. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just theft. This was an execution. They were stripping him naked. They were going to leave him homeless, bankrupt, and destroyed. I looked at the clock. It was 4 in the morning. I had 5 hours before the wire transfer initiated. 5 hours to stop a $2 million theft. I couldn't call the bank. I wasn't the account holder. I couldn't call Terrence. He wouldn't believe me. And by the time he checked, the money would be gone. I had to go to the source. I grabbed my keys. I grabbed the folder of printed evidence. I wasn't going to Terrence. I wasn't going to the police. I was going to the office of Shark Fin Capital. It was listed on the document. A shady storefront in the industrial district. And then I was going to Freeman Freight. I was done hiding in the shadows. I was done being the nice old man with the chicken stew. Enoch Freeman was going to war. I drove my truck up onto the curb right in front of the glass doors of Freeman Freight. I did not care about parking regulations. I did not care about the manicured landscaping I was ruining. It was 8:45 in the morning. The wire transfer for the $2 million mortgage fraud was scheduled to execute at 9. I had 15 minutes to save my son from financial ruin. I grabbed the manila folder from the passenger seat. It was thick with the evidence I had gathered overnight. The marriage license proving bigamy. The Delaware corporate filing showing the shell companies. The hard money loan document with the forged signature. It was enough to send half the executive board to prison for 20 years. My heart was hammering a dangerous rhythm against my ribs. I hadn't slept in 24 hours. I hadn't eaten. My clothes were wrinkled, and I probably smelled like stale coffee and desperation. I knew I looked like a madman. I knew that was exactly what they wanted me to look like, but I didn't care. I was a father first and an auditor second. I burst through the double glass doors. The lobby had changed since I was last here a month ago. The warm oak reception desk was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp slab of white marble. The receptionist was new. She was young, wearing a headset, and she looked up at me with alarm as I stormed in. "Sir, you cannot park there," she stammered, standing up. I ignored her. I marched toward the security turnstiles. I pulled out my old master key card, the one I had used to sneak in 2 nights ago. I slapped it against the reader. It beeped red. Access denied. They had deactivated it. Of course they had. They knew I was coming, or at least they knew I was a threat. "Sir!" the receptionist shouted, reaching for her phone. "I am calling security." "You need to leave." "I am not leaving," I barked, my voice echoing off the high ceilings. "I am Enoch Freeman. This is my son as company. Get Terrence down here, now." I didn't wait for her to dial. I vaulted over the turnstile. It was a clumsy move for a man of 69. My shin clipped the metal bar, and pain shot up my leg, hot and sharp. I stumbled, but I didn't fall. I kept moving toward the elevators. I needed to get to the 3rd floor. I needed to slam these papers on Terrence's desk and force him to look at the signature on the loan document before the bank opened the wire. The elevator doors were closing. I jammed my hand in the gap. The safety sensor tripped, and the doors bounced back open. But before I could step inside, the elevator car was already occupied. Standing there, right in the center of the car, was Victoria. She was not in Aruba. She was not on a beach. She was wearing a tailored navy blue power suit that cost more than my truck. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, perfect bun. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, not a woman who was supposed to be finding her inner peace on an island. She didn't look surprised to see me. She didn't look scared. She smiled. It was a small, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was the smile of a predator who had just watched the trap snap shut. "Hello, Enoch," she said calmly. "You are right on time." I froze. The folder shook in my hand. "You," I breathed. "You are supposed to be 4,000 miles away." "Plans change," she said, stepping out of the elevator. She blocked my path. She stood between me and the buttons that would take me to my son. "Move, Victoria," I growled. "I know everything. I know about Gavin. I know about the shell companies. I know about the mortgage. I am going to show Terrence everything." She laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was a laugh of genuine amusement. "You are going to show him what, Enoch? Some papers you printed off the internet? Some conspiracy theories you cooked up in that sad little house of yours? Do you really think he is going to believe you? He will believe his own signature on a loan document he never signed," I shouted. I tried to step around her, but she moved with me, mirroring my steps. Behind her, I saw two large men in dark uniforms coming from the security office. They weren't the regular building guards. These were private contractors. Gavin must have hired them. Victoria reached into her designer briefcase. She pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was folded in thirds. She held it out to me with 2 fingers, as if it were a piece of trash she wanted me to dispose of. "Read this," she said. I slapped her hand away. "I don't want your lies." "It is a court order, Enoch," she said, her voice turning hard. "It is a temporary restraining order, signed by a judge at 8 o'clock this morning." I stopped. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. A restraining order. I snatched the paper. My eyes scanned the legal text. It was an ex parte order. That meant she had gone to a judge without me being present. She had filed an emergency petition claiming immediate danger. The petitioner, Victoria Freeman, alleges that the respondent, Enoch Freeman, has exhibited a pattern of harassment, stalking, and threatening behavior. Petitioner states that the respondent suffers from undiagnosed dementia and has made violent threats against her life and the safety of her husband. Petitioner fears imminent bodily harm. I looked up at her. My mouth fell open. "Dementia, violent threats. You are evil," I whispered. "I have never threatened anyone in my life." Victoria's face crumbled. In an instant, she transformed. Her shoulders slumped. Her lower lip began to tremble. Tears welled up in her eyes. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. "Please, Dad," she said, her voice pitching up, loud enough for the receptionist and the approaching guards to hear. "Please don't hurt me. We just want you to get help. We love you, but you are scaring us." "What are you doing?" I stammered. "Stop acting." The 2 security guards were on me in a second. One grabbed my left arm, the other grabbed my right. They were strong. They twisted my arms behind my back, forcing me to drop the folder. The papers scattered across the marble floor. The evidence, the marriage license, the bank transfers. They fanned out like a deck of cards. "Let me go!" I roared, struggling against their grip. "Those papers are proof. She is stealing everything." Victoria stepped back, pressing a hand to her chest, looking at the guards with wide, fearful eyes. "Please," she sobbed. "He has a gun in his truck. He told me he was going to burn the building down. Get him out of here." "Liar!" I screamed. "I don't have a gun." The commotion drew attention. The elevator doors behind Victoria opened again, and there was Terrence. He looked terrible. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. His eyes were bloodshot. He held a coffee cup in one hand and a stack of files in the other. He looked like a man who was drowning. He stepped out of the elevator and stopped. He looked at the papers scattered on the floor. He looked at the guards holding his father. He looked at his wife, who was crying and shaking. "Dad?" Terrence said, his voice thick with confusion. "What is happening? Victoria? You are back?" "Terrence!" I shouted. The guards tightened their grip, hurting my shoulder. "Terrence, listen to me. She is lying. She isn't in Aruba. She is here. She is robbing you. Look at the papers on the floor." Victoria ran to Terrence. She buried her face in his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. "Oh God, Terry," she cried. "He came here to kill me. He found out I came back early to surprise you and he was waiting in the parking lot. He said he was going to finish what he started. He is sick, Terry. He is so sick." Terrence wrapped his arms around her. He looked at me over her shoulder. His eyes weren't filled with concern for me anymore. They were filled with fear. Fear of me. "Dad, why are you doing this?" Terrence asked. His voice broke. "Why can't you just let us be happy?" "I am trying to save you," I yelled. "Look at the floor. Look at the marriage license. She is married to Gavin." Terrence looked down at the mess of papers, but he didn't see the text. He just saw chaos. He saw the ramblings of a madman scattered on his lobby floor. "Get him out of here," Terrence said to the guards. His voice was cold, dead cold. "Terrence, no," I pleaded. "The wire transfer. It happens at 9. Check your bank account. Just check the account. Don't hurt him," Victoria sobbed into his shirt. "Just make him leave. Please, just make him leave." The guards began to drag me backward. My heels skidded on the polished floor. I fought them. I kicked and twisted. But I was an old man against two giants. "Take your father home," Terrence said to the air. "Or take him to a hospital. I don't care. Just get him off my property." He turned his back on me. He turned his back and guided Victoria toward the elevators. He was comforting the viper who was about to bite him. "Wait!" I screamed. My voice was raw. "Terrence!" He didn't look back. The elevator doors opened. He walked her inside. But just before the doors closed, Victoria turned her head. She looked at me one last time. She wasn't crying anymore. Her face was dry and composed. She disentangled herself slightly from Terrence and took a step toward the closing doors. She looked directly into my eyes as the guards shoved me through the main entrance. She mouthed something. I couldn't hear it over the sound of my own blood rushing in my ears, but I read her lips perfectly. Checkmate. The guards threw me out onto the sidewalk. I landed hard on my hip. The concrete scraped the skin off my palms. My glasses flew off and skittered across the pavement. "Stay off the property, old man," one of the guards spat. "Or next time you leave in a cruiser." They turned and walked back inside, locking the glass doors behind them. I lay there on the cold ground for a moment. My hip throbbed. My dignity was shattered. I watched through the glass as the receptionist came out from behind her desk and started picking up my papers. She wasn't gathering them to give them back. She was crumpling them up. She was throwing the evidence into a recycling bin. I sat up slowly. I found my glasses. One lens was cracked, a spider web of fractures that distorted the world. I looked at my watch, 8:58. I had failed. In 2 minutes, the wire transfer would initiate. $2 million of equity would leave my son's name and travel to a bank in Miami, and then vanish into the offshore ether. The house I had bought with 30 years of sweat was gone. I pulled myself up. I leaned against a concrete planter, gasping for breath. My chest felt tight, not from a heart condition, but from the crushing weight of helplessness. I looked up at the third-floor window. I saw the silhouette of two people, Terrence and Victoria. She had her hand on his chest. She was soothing him. She was probably telling him how brave he was for standing up to his abusive father. And then, as I watched, the lights in the office flickered. Someone walked past the window. It was Gavin. I recognized his silhouette. He was holding a bottle of champagne. They were celebrating. They weren't even waiting for the money to clear. They were popping corks while my son signed his own death warrant. I closed my eyes. I felt a tear, hot and angry, slide down my cheek. But then I remembered something. I remembered the whisper. As the guards were dragging me past the elevator, just before the doors closed, Victoria had said something else. It was faint, barely a breath, meant only for me. "Next time you come, remember to bring your heart medication, Daddy." I froze. I didn't have a heart condition. I had never taken heart medication in my life. My heart was as strong as an ox. That was the one thing the doctor always praised. So why did she say that? Why would she mention heart medication to a man who didn't need it, unless she planned for me to need it? My mind flashed back to the conversation I overheard 2 nights ago. If he fights it, let him fight. And then I thought about the coffee Terrence had offered me yesterday. I hadn't drunk it, but she didn't know that. And I thought about the dinner invitation for next Sunday that Terrence had mentioned weeks ago. She wasn't just planning to steal the money. She was planning a cleanup operation. A man with dementia who dies of a sudden heart attack is a tragedy, but it isn't a crime scene, especially if he has a history of erratic behavior and violent outbursts recorded in a restraining order. She was setting the stage for my death. The realization didn't make me afraid. It made me cold. It replaced the panic with a glacial resolve. She had made a mistake. She had threatened me. She had shown her hand. I limped toward my truck. I wasn't going home to cry. I wasn't going to the hospital. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my burner phone. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 10 years. A number that belonged to a man who owed me a favor. A man who used to be the best litigator in the state before he got disbarred for playing too dirty. Strickland. He answered on the second ring. "Freeman?" he rasped. "I thought you were dead." "Not yet," I said, staring at the Freeman Freight Building. "But I need to kill a company, and I need to do it by Friday." "I am listening," Strickland said. I put the truck in gear. The wire transfer was gone. The house was gone. The legal route was blocked. Fine. If they wanted to play by the rules of the jungle, I would show them what an apex predator looked like. I was going to burn their paper castle to the ground. And I was going to start by finding out exactly where that champagne came from. I drove my truck to the south side of Chicago, to a place called Earl's Diner. It was a relic from a different era, with cracked vinyl seats and a smell of grease that had seeped into the drywall decades ago. It was the kind of place where nobody asked questions, and cash was the only currency accepted. It was also the office of the most dangerous legal mind I knew. Strickland was sitting in the back booth. He looked like a man who had been chewed up by the legal system and spit out hard. He wore a rumpled linen suit and a fedora that hid his thinning gray hair. He was stirring a cup of black coffee with a plastic spoon. He didn't look up when I slid into the booth opposite him. "You look like hell, Freeman," he said. "I feel like hell," I replied. I placed the restraining order on the sticky table between us. I smoothed out the creases. Strickland picked it up. He put on a pair of drugstore reading glasses and scanned the document. He didn't blink. He didn't gasp. He just hummed a low note of disapproval. "This is tight," he said, tossing the paper back. "Ex parte order. Imminent threat of violence. Allegations of dementia. They boxed you in, Enoch. If you go within 500 feet of your son or his wife, you go to jail. If you try to contact them electronically, you go to jail. If you try to access the company accounts directly, you go to jail for violating a court order. They are stealing everything, Strickland," I said, my voice low and urgent. "They drained the equity in his house this morning. $2 million. Gone. They are liquidating the company assets through shell companies in Delaware. They are setting him up for a federal indictment for fraud." "I know," Strickland said. "I ran the names you gave me on the phone. Gavin Miller is a ghost. He changes his name every 5 years. Victoria is worse. She has 3 social security numbers attached to her credit file. These aren't amateurs, Enoch. They are professionals. And right now they have the law on their side. So what do I do?" I asked. "Do I just watch them burn my son to the ground?" Strickland took a sip of his coffee. "You have 2 options," he said. "Option 1 is you hire a criminal defense attorney for your son and hope he gets a lenient sentence when the feds come knocking. Option 2 is we stop playing defense and we start playing offense." "I want offense," I said. "Then you need leverage," Strickland said. "You need a way back into that building that doesn't involve breaking a restraining order. You need standing. Right now, you are just a dad. Dads don't have legal standing in corporate disputes. Shareholders do. Board members do. But you aren't on the board, are you?" I looked at Strickland. I looked around the diner to make sure no one was listening. The waitress was busy shouting an order to the cook. "It is time to open the vaults, Strickland," I said. He paused. He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "You mean the trust?" he asked. I nodded. 10 years ago, when Terrence started Freeman Freight, he needed capital. He couldn't get a loan. The banks looked at a young black man with a big idea, and they saw risk. I had the money. I had saved and invested for 40 years. But I knew Terrence. He is proud. He wanted to do it on his own. If I had given him the money, he would have felt indebted. He would have felt like he was spending his father's retirement. So I created a ghost. I set up a venture capital firm called Ironwood Holdings. I registered it in Nevada for privacy. I appointed a proxy to sign the paperwork. Ironwood Holdings invested $2 million into Freeman Freight in exchange for a 40% equity stake and a silent seat on the board of directors. Terrence thought Ironwood was a group of angel investors from the West Coast. He sent them quarterly reports. He tried to impress them with his growth. He never knew that the chairman of Ironwood Holdings was the old man bringing him chicken stew on Tuesday nights. "Do you have the original operating agreement?" Strickland asked. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a flash drive. "It is all here," I said, "including the bylaws. Specifically, Article 7, Section 4. Strickland plugged the drive into a battered laptop he pulled from his bag. He clicked through the files. He found the document. He read the section I mentioned. A slow, wolfish smile spread across his face. The silent chairman clause, he read aloud. In the event of gross mismanagement, criminal negligence, or financial irregularity by the CEO, the silent chairman reserves the right to reveal their identity, assume emergency executive powers, and veto any board decision, including the sale or liquidation of assets. It was my fail-safe. I never thought I would have to use it. I put it there to protect the company from outsiders, not from my own son. But now my son was the weapon the outsiders were using. "This is good," Strickland said, closing the laptop. "This is very good, but it is not a magic wand. We have to file this with the Secretary of State. We have to serve notice to the current board. That takes time. At least 48 hours to get a judge to certify the emergency injunction if we want to bypass the standard notice period." "We don't have 48 hours, I said. "They are moving the money now. They are going to merge the company with a shell entity and disappear by Friday. Then we need to stall them," Strickland said. "We need to throw sand in the gears. We need to make them think they have won, so they get sloppy." "How do we do that?" "We let them fire everyone," Strickland said. I stared at him. "What?" "Think about it, Enoch. They want to strip the company. The biggest liability in any company is the staff, the witnesses, the people who know where the bodies are buried. If they are planning a bust out, they will start firing the loyalists today. They will isolate Terrence. They will make him feel like the business is failing, so he signs the merger papers out of desperation. I don't want my son to suffer," I said. "He has to suffer," Strickland said brutally. "Pain is the only thing that will wake him up. If we intervene now with the Ironwood reveal, they will fight it in court. They will claim the document is forged. They will drag it out while they drain the accounts. We need to catch them in the act of destruction. We need them to commit a crime so undeniable that even a blind man can see it. So I just watch," I asked. "You watch," Strickland said, "and I file the paperwork. By Friday morning, you won't just be a father. You will be the boss. And then you can fire them all." I left the diner with a knot in my stomach. Strickland was right, but it felt cruel. I was the angel investor who was about to let the devil run the show for 2 more days. I drove back toward the city, but I stayed far away from the office. I parked in a lot overlooking the river, where I had a line of sight to the Freeman Freight building across the water. I took out my binoculars. I watched the 3rd-floor windows. It started at 2 in the afternoon. I saw security guards escorting people out. Not just anyone. These were people I knew. There was Mrs. Higgins, the head of accounting. She had been with Terrence since day 1. She was a grandmother of 6 who baked cookies for the office. I saw her walking out to the parking lot holding a cardboard box, crying. There was Marcus, the fleet manager, a young man Terrence had mentored. He looked angry. He was shouting at the building, throwing his access badge on the ground. One by one they were purged. The institutional memory of the company was being erased. I adjusted the focus on my binoculars. I looked into Terrence's office. He was standing there. He looked small. He looked defeated. Victoria was standing next to him. She had her hand on his shoulder. She was talking to him. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew the script. "It is necessary, Terrence. We have to cut costs. They were holding us back. We are building something new." She was isolating him. She was removing anyone who might whisper a warning in his ear. She was removing anyone who might notice that the invoices to Apex Solutions were fake. Gavin walked into the office. He placed a stack of papers on Terrence's desk. Terrence hesitated. He looked at the papers. He looked at the window where his loyal employees were driving away. He didn't want to sign. I could see the conflict in his body language. He was a good man. He cared about his people. But then Victoria moved. She stepped in front of him. She cupped his face in her hands. She kissed him. It was a long, performative kiss. When she pulled away, she handed him a pen. Terrence signed. I lowered the binoculars. I felt sick. He had just authorized the mass layoffs. He had just signed away the heart of his company. He was completely alone now. Alone with 2 wolves who were licking their chops. I picked up my burner phone. I dialed Strickland. "File the papers," I said. "It is already done," Freeman Strickland replied. "The judge will review the emergency motion tomorrow morning. By Friday at 9 a.m., you will be the legal dictator of Freeman Freight." "Good," I said. because on Friday at 9 a.m., I am going to walk into that boardroom and I am going to unleash hell. But I knew I couldn't just wait. 2 days was a long time for a man as unstable as Terrence was becoming. I needed eyes on the inside. I needed to know exactly what they were saying when they thought they were alone. I couldn't go in. The building was a fortress. But Victoria had a car, a white Porsche Cayenne, the symbol of her vanity, and vanity makes people careless. I knew where she parked it at night, not at Terrence's house. She had been staying at the Peninsula Hotel, claiming she needed space to recover from her trip. I drove to the hotel. I waited. At 7 p.m. the valet brought her car around. She came out wearing a cocktail dress accompanied by Gavin. They were laughing. They got into the car. They didn't drive to Terrence's house. They drove to a high-end steakhouse on the Gold Coast. I followed them. I watched them hand the keys to the valet at the restaurant. I waited until the valet parking attendant was distracted. I walked past the row of luxury cars. I slipped a small black magnetic box under the rear bumper of the Porsche. It wasn't just a GPS tracker. It was a high-gain listening device that transmitted audio over a cellular signal. I had bought it from a private investigator friend years ago. I walked away quickly, my heart racing. I got back in my truck and put on my headphones. I waited for them to come out. An hour later they emerged. They were drunk. They were stumbling. They got into the car. The audio crackled to life in my ears. "To the victor go the spoils," Gavin slurred. Victoria laughed. It was a sound that made my skin crawl. "We did it," she said. "He signed the layoffs. The payroll account is free. We transfer the last $3 million tomorrow." "And then what?" Gavin asked. "Then we dump him," Victoria said. "Dump him how?" "I already called the police anonymous tip line," Victoria said. "I told them I suspect my husband is cooking the books. I told them I found drugs in his desk." "Drugs?" Gavin asked. "I planted them this morning," Victoria said casually. "A bag of cocaine taped under his office chair. When the audit hits and the money is missing, they will find the drugs. A drug-addled CEO embezzling money to feed his habit. It fits the narrative perfectly." I gripped the steering wheel. She wasn't just going to bankrupt him. She was going to send him to prison for possession and embezzlement. She was going to bury him so deep he would never see the sun again. "I took the birth control pills out of my purse," she continued. "I threw them in the trash. He keeps asking about a baby. Can you believe it? He thinks we are trying." She snorted. "I would rather have a baby with a hyena than with that weakling." I listened to every word. I recorded every second. They drove back to the hotel. I sat in my truck in the dark. Friday was too late. If the police raided his office before Friday, my son would be in handcuffs. I had to accelerate the timeline. I needed to get Terrence out of that office. I needed to get him away from them. But he wouldn't come to me. He hated me right now. I had to use the one thing he still respected, the truth about his mother. Not my wife, his mother. I started the engine. I had a box in my attic. A box of letters my wife had written to Terrence before she died. Letters she told me to give him when he was lost. He was lost now. It was time to bring him home. I sat in my truck 2 blocks away from the Aura Wellness Spa on the north side. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, but my mind was vibrating with a frequency of pure rage. The magnetic device I had placed on the bumper the night before had given me enough to know they were criminals, but wind noise and traffic interference made it inadmissible in a court of law, and more importantly, it was not enough to snap my son out of his trance. I needed high-definition audio. I needed to hear them breathe. I needed a microphone inside the cabin of that Porsche. I had called a man named Sal. Sal was a former private investigator who lost his license for breaking and entering, but kept his skills sharp. He owed me a favor from a tax audit in '98, where I looked the other way on some unreported cash income. I called in the debt. Sal was currently wearing a valet uniform. He was standing at the entrance of the spa waiting for Victoria. She had a standing appointment every Wednesday at 2 for a deep tissue massage. It was part of her routine. Criminals love routine. It makes them feel safe. I watched through my binoculars as the white Porsche pulled up. Victoria got out. She tossed the keys to Sal without even looking at his face. That was her fatal flaw. She never looked at the help. She assumed we were invisible. Sal caught the keys. He gave her a polite nod. As soon as the glass doors of the spa closed behind her, Sal drove the car around the corner into the alley where I was waiting. We had 45 minutes. Sal popped the passenger door open. He worked fast. He pulled back the leather casing of the dashboard near the glove box. He wired a listening device directly into the car's power supply. This wasn't a battery-operated toy. This would run as long as the car had a battery. It transmitted via a secure cellular signal directly to my laptop and my phone. He sealed the dashboard back up. It looked untouched. He wiped down the leather with a microfiber cloth to remove any fingerprints. "You are good to go," Enoch, Sal said, handing me the frequency key. "The audio quality on this is studio grade. You will hear her stomach growl. Get it back to the front," I said. Sal drove off. I sat in the alley and opened my laptop. I put on my noise-canceling headphones. I waited. 40 minutes later, the audio feed spiked. I heard the heavy thud of the car doors closing. The engine purred to life. The clarity was terrifying. It sounded like I was sitting in the back seat. "Where to?" Gavin asked. "Let's just drive," Victoria said. "I need to clear my head. That masseuse was too rough." They pulled out into traffic. For a few minutes there was only the sound of the turn signal and the hum of the engine. Then Victoria sighed. It was a sound of deep contempt. "Did you see the text he sent me?" she asked. Terrence, Gavin asked. "Who else?" Victoria snapped. "He sent me a picture of a crib." "A crib, Gavin. He wants to know if I like the oak finish or the white finish. He is turning the guest room into a nursery in his head." I heard Gavin chuckle. It was a wet, nasty sound. "He still thinks it is happening, huh?" Gavin asked. "He thinks we have been trying for 2 years, Victoria said. Her voice dripped with venom. "Every month when I get my period, he acts like someone died. He brings me flowers. He rubs my back. He tells me we will keep trying. It is pathetic." She paused. I heard the rustle of fabric. "I stopped taking the pill 3 years ago," she said, "but I got an IUD the next day. The doctor asked if my husband knew. I told him my husband wanted 5 kids, and I wanted a career. He bought it. Terrence thinks I am barren. He actually suggested we go to a fertility specialist next month." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. My son wanted to be a father more than anything in the world. He had built that house for a family. He had worked those long hours to provide for children he thought were coming, and she had surgically ensured it would never happen, while letting him blame himself. "Let him go to the specialist," Gavin said. "It will keep him distracted while the audit team tears apart the books." "I don't have the patience for it anymore," Victoria said. "I look at him across the dinner table and I just want to scream. He is so soft. He sits there with those big puppy dog eyes asking me about my day. He has no edge. He has no bite." "He built a $10 million company," Gavin pointed out. "He got lucky," Victoria countered, "and he had daddy's money hidden in the background. That old man thinks I don't know he funneled cash in the beginning. They are both the same, weak men trying to play business." I gripped the edge of my laptop. But then she said something that made the air leave my lungs. "You know what the worst part is?" she said. "It is the smell." "The smell?" Gavin asked. "He smells like them," Victoria said. "No matter how expensive the cologne is, no matter how many custom suits I buy him, he still smells like the South Side. He still talks like them when he gets excited. He tries so hard to fit in with our circle, Gavin. He tries to talk about wine and art, but you can see it in his eyes. He is just a dumb black boy playing dress-up in a white man's world." The slur hung in the air. It wasn't just a word. It was a weapon. She had married him. She slept in his bed. She ate his food. And the whole time she looked at him and saw something less than human. She saw a racial caricature she could exploit. I heard Gavin laugh. "He really thinks he is one of us," he said. "He will never be one of us," Victoria said, cold as ice. "He is a mark. He is a resource, and the resource is almost dry. Once the bankruptcy hits and the fraud charges stick, he will go back to where he belongs. He will be just another statistic, another black man in the system, and I will be the grieving white wife who tried to save him from his own corrupt nature. The jury will eat it up." I tore the headphones off my head. I couldn't breathe. The cab of my truck felt like a coffin. My left arm went numb. A sharp, agonizing pressure bloomed in the center of my chest. It felt like a fist squeezing my heart. I gasped for air. I fumbled for the glove box. I didn't have heart medication because I didn't have a heart condition, but I had aspirin. I chewed too dry. The bitter taste filled my mouth. I leaned back, closing my eyes. The pain was blinding. I wasn't having a heart attack from clogged arteries. I was having a heart attack from a broken heart. My son, my beautiful, brilliant son. He worshipped her. He thought she was his queen, and she was plotting to put him in a cage because she despised the color of his skin. I lay there for 20 minutes, waiting for my pulse to slow down. I focused on my breathing. In, out. I could not die, not yet. If I died now, they won. Slowly, the pain subsided to a dull ache. I sat up. I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead. I looked at the clock. It was 11 at night. I needed to hear his voice. I needed to know he was still alive. I picked up my burner phone. I dialed his number. He answered on the fourth ring. His voice was thick and slurred. He had been drinking. "Hello," he mumbled. "Terrence," I said, my voice raspy. "Dad," he said. He sounded tired, defeated. "Why are you calling? It is late." "I am sitting in my truck, Terrence," I said. "I am looking at the stars, and I just needed to ask you one question." "What, Dad? Are you happy?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the clink of a bottle against a glass. I could hear the hum of his empty house. "Happy," he repeated. The word sounded foreign in his mouth. "Yes, son. Are you happy with your life? Are you happy with her?" He let out a breath that sounded like a sob trapped in his throat. "She is in Aruba, Dad," he said automatically. "She is having a great time. She sent me a picture. I didn't ask where she was, Terrence. I asked if you were happy." The silence stretched out. I closed my eyes and prayed. I prayed that the spell was breaking. I prayed that somewhere deep inside him, the man I raised was waking up. "I don't know, Dad," he whispered. The admission hung between us. It was the first honest thing he had said in 2 years. "I feel like I am drowning," he said, his voice cracking. "I feel like I am running as fast as I can, but the ground keeps disappearing. The money is gone, Dad. I don't know where it went. I look at the spreadsheets and the numbers don't add up. And Victoria, she tells me it is fine. She tells me to trust her. But when she looks at me," he stopped. "What do you see when she looks at you, son?" I asked gently. "I see a stranger," he said. "I see someone who is waiting for something, like she is watching a clock. And I am scared, Dad. I am so scared." I gripped the phone. Tears streamed down my face. "Listen to me, Terrence," I said. "You are not alone. You have never been alone. I am here." "I messed up, Dad," he cried. "I messed everything up." "No, son. You didn't mess up. You were targeted. But we are going to fix it." "How?" he asked. "How do we fix this?" "Go to sleep, Terrence," I said. "Put the bottle down. Go to sleep. Tomorrow is going to be the hardest day of your life, but it is also going to be the first day of your freedom." "I love you, Dad," he whispered. "I love you too, son." I hung up. He was ready. He was broken enough to listen. I started the truck. I had the recordings. I had the documents. And now I had the motivation of a father who had just heard his son called a racial slur by the woman sleeping next to him. I wasn't just going to take the company back. I was going to destroy them. I was going to make sure that when the dust settled, Victoria and Gavin wouldn't just be in prison. They would be pariahs. I drove to the hospital, not for me, but to set the stage for the final act. I needed to get Terrence into a room where Victoria couldn't control the narrative. I needed a sterile environment. I needed witnesses. I walked into the emergency room at midnight. I walked up to the triage nurse. I put on my best acting face. "I think I am having a stroke," I said. And then I let my legs give out, and I collapsed onto the floor. The smell of a hospital is distinct. It is a mixture of antiseptic, floor wax, and fear. I lay in bed 16 in the cardiac observation unit, with my eyes half closed and a plastic tube running into my nose. The monitor next to me beeped in a steady, rhythmic cadence that was the only thing keeping me grounded. I was not having a stroke. My heart was fine. But I needed the world to believe I was dying. I had staged it perfectly. The collapse in the triage room, the slurred speech, the confusion. The doctors were running tests, but they could not find a blockage. They called it a transient ischemic attack, a warning shot. They wanted to keep me for observation. That was exactly what I wanted. I needed a stage where I was helpless and where my son would be forced to visit me without his guards. It was 2 in the morning when they arrived. I heard them before I saw them. I heard the click of Victoria high heels on the linoleum floor. It was an aggressive sound, a sound that said she was annoyed to be here. I relaxed my face muscles. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I stared at a spot on the ceiling with a vacant, glassy look. I had to sell this. If Victoria suspected for 1 second that I was lucid, she would not make a mistake. And I needed her to make a mistake. The curtain pulled back. Terrence stood there. He looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 2 days. His shirt was wrinkled. His tie was loose. His eyes were red-rimmed and sunken. He looked at me lying there hooked up to machines, and he crumbled. "Oh, Dad," he whispered. His voice was thick with guilt. He walked to the side of the bed and took my hand. His hand was shaking. "I am so sorry, Dad," he said. "I never meant for this to happen. I should have listened. I should have—" "Hush," Victoria said. She stepped into the light. She looked impeccable, as always, even at 2 in the morning. She was wearing a cashmere wrap and holding a designer coffee cup. She looked at me with an expression of mild distaste, as if I were a stain on a rug she could not quite scrub out. "He cannot hear you, Terrence," she said. "The nurse said he is heavily sedated. Don't waste your energy. You need to save your strength for the meeting tomorrow." Terrence ignored her. He squeezed my hand. "Dad, if you can hear me, please wake up. I need you. I don't know what to do." I wanted to squeeze back. I wanted to sit up and tell him I was fine, but I couldn't, not yet. I made a low groaning sound in my throat. My eyes fluttered, but I did not focus on him. I looked past him. "See," Victoria said, stepping closer. "He is gone, Terrence. The stress was too much for his heart. Just like I told you, he is old. His mind is going. This is probably for the best. Now we can get him the care he needs in a facility where professionals can deal with him." She placed a hand on Terrence's shoulder. It looked like a gesture of comfort, but I saw her fingers dig into his muscle. It was a gesture of control. "We have to go, Terrence," she said. "The merger documents are ready. Gavin is waiting for us at the office to prep the final signatures. You can't help him by sitting here crying." "I am not leaving him," Terrence said firmly. He pulled away from her touch. "I am staying here tonight. You go." Victoria's eyes narrowed. I saw the flash of anger, but she masked it quickly. "Baby," she cooed, "you have to sign the papers at 9 a.m. If you stay here, you will be exhausted. You won't be thinking clearly. Let me handle the doctors. I will hire a private nurse to sit with him." "No," Terrence said. He sat down in the uncomfortable plastic chair next to my bed. He didn't let go of my hand. "Go home, Victoria. I will meet you at the office in the morning." Victoria stood there for a moment. She was calculating. She realized she couldn't force him without causing a scene in the ICU. "Fine," she said coldly, "but keep your phone on. Gavin needs to review the liability clauses with you." She turned to leave, but then Terrence's phone rang. It was a loud, jarring sound in the quiet room. He looked at the screen. "It is the bank," he said. "Answer it," Victoria ordered. "If it is about the wire transfer, we need to handle it." Terrence stood up. "I have to take this," he whispered to me. "I will be right back, Dad." He walked out of the room and down the hallway to get a signal. I was alone with Victoria. This was the moment. I kept my eyes fixed on the ceiling. I kept my breathing shallow and uneven. I was a vegetable. I was a problem that had solved itself. Victoria walked to the door. She looked down the hallway to make sure Terrence was gone. Then she closed the door. She walked back to my bed. The mask dropped. Her face didn't look beautiful anymore. It looked feral. She leaned over me. Her perfume was overpowering. It smelled of expensive flowers and rot. "You stubborn old bastard," she whispered. She reached out and pinched the soft skin of my arm, right where the IV needle entered my vein. She pinched hard. She twisted the skin. It hurt. It hurt like hell. The needle dug into the wall of my vein. A sharp, burning pain shot up my arm. My body wanted to recoil. My instincts screamed at me to grab her wrist and break it. But I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I let out a soft, involuntary moan, but I did not break character. She smiled. She enjoyed it. She enjoyed the power. "You just couldn't die, could you?" she hissed. "You had to come to the office. You had to make a scene. You almost ruined everything." She leaned closer. Her lips were inches from my ear. "But you know what, Enoch? You actually helped me. That little stunt in the lobby gave me everything I needed. The restraining order is airtight. And now this. A stroke. It proves you are incompetent. It proves you are weak. By tomorrow afternoon, I will have medical power of attorney over you. and the first thing I am going to do is sign a do not resuscitate order." She dug her fingernails into my hand. "And then I am going to put you in the cheapest state-run facility I can find, a place where they smell like urine and forget to feed the patients, and you will sit there and rot while I spend every dime your son made. I am going to bleed him dry, Enoch. I am going to take the house. I am going to take the cars. I am going to take the offshore accounts he doesn't even know about yet. And when he is bankrupt and broken, I am going to leave him." She laughed softly. "He thinks I want a baby. The only thing I want from him is his signature on that merger document. Once I have that, I am gone. And you will be stuck in a bed just like this one, unable to tell anyone what you know." I lay there and took it. I absorbed every word. I memorized the cadence of her cruelty. And under the thin hospital blanket, my right hand was resting on my thigh. In my pocket, my phone was recording. The high-definition microphone I had bought was capturing every syllable of her confession. Her threat to kill me via neglect, her admission of the theft, her plan to abandon my son. It was all there. "Terrence is going to sign tomorrow," she whispered, "and there is nothing you can do about it. You lost, Enoch. You played the game, and you lost." She patted my cheek. It was a slap disguised as a caress. "Goodbye, Daddy." She straightened up and fixed her hair. She checked her reflection in the darkened monitor screen. She put the mask back on. The worried daughter-in-law. The door opened. Terrence walked back in. He looked even worse than before. "Is everything okay?" Victoria asked, her voice instantly filled with concern. "Was it the bank?" Terrence nodded. He put his phone in his pocket. He looked at me. "They are calling the loan," he said, his voice hollow. "The hard money lender. They said there was a discrepancy with the collateral. They want the full $2 million back by close of business tomorrow, or they are foreclosing on the house and seizing the company assets." Victoria gasped. She put a hand over her mouth. "Oh my God, Terry, what are we going to do?" "We have to sell," Terrence said. He sounded like a man who was reading his own obituary. "I have no choice. The merger is the only way to get the cash injection to pay off the loan. Gavin said the buyers are ready to sign at 9 a.m. Victoria hugged him. "Oh, honey, I am so sorry. I know how much this company means to you, but we have to survive. We can start over. We can build something new, together." Terrence nodded against her shoulder. He looked defeated. He looked like a man who had accepted his fate. "Yeah," he said, "together." He pulled away from her. "Give me a minute with him, Vic," he said. "I need to say goodbye. I don't know if I will be able to come back tomorrow if things go crazy." "Of course, baby," she said. "I will wait in the car. Take your time." She looked at me one last time. A triumphant smirk played on her lips. Then she walked out. I waited until the door clicked shut. I waited until I heard the click of her heels fade down the hallway. I opened my eyes. Terrence jumped. He stared at me. "Dad," he gasped. I sat up. I ripped the oxygen tube out of my nose. I winced as I pulled the IV needle out of my arm where she had twisted it. A drop of blood welled up, but I ignored it. I grabbed Terrence by the lapels of his jacket. I pulled him close. My grip was iron. I wasn't the weak old man anymore. "Dad, what are you doing?" Terrence stammered. "You had a stroke." "I didn't have a stroke, son," I said, my voice raspy but strong. "And you aren't going to sell the company. Not like this." "Dad, you were confused," Terrence said, trying to push me back. "The doctor said." "The doctor sees what I want him to see," I snapped. "Listen to me, Terrence. We don't have time. She is waiting in the car." Terrence looked at me. He saw the clarity in my eyes. He saw the fire. "She hurt you," he whispered, looking at the bruise forming on my arm. "She tried," I said, "but she failed. Now listen to me. Tomorrow morning you are going to go into that meeting. You are going to sit at the head of the table. You are going to look Gavin and Victoria in the eye." "I can't, Dad," Terrence said, his voice breaking. "I have to sign. The loan, the debt, they will take everything." "Let them try," I said. "You go into that meeting, and when they put the paper in front of you, you tell them you need to consult with the board." "I am the board, Dad," Terrence said. "It is just me." "No, son," I said. "You aren't the board. You never were." I reached under my pillow. I pulled out a small flash drive. I pressed it into his hand. "Read the bylaws, Terrence," I said. "Read Article 7, Section 4. Read the name of the silent chairman of Ironwood Holdings." He looked at the drive. He looked at me. "Ironwood," he whispered. "That was the angel investor. That was the money that started everything. I am Ironwood, I said. Terrence's eyes went wide. But you drive a truck, you fish. I saved, I said, and I invested in the only thing I believed in, you. Now you go to that meeting, you stall them, you make them think you are weak, and when the clock strikes 9, you open the door. Who is coming at 9? Terrence asked. I am, I said, and I am bringing the fire. Now go. Cry if you have to. Make her believe you are broken. Do not let her know I am awake. If she knows, she will run, and we need her in that room. Terrence stood up. He looked at the flash drive in his hand. He looked at me. For the first time in months, I saw a spark of the man he used to be. The man who built a logistics empire from a garage. He wiped his eyes. He straightened his tie. Okay, Dad, he said. He turned and walked to the door. He paused. Dad, he said without looking back, that chicken stew, is there any left? There is a whole pot in the fridge, son, I said. He nodded. Then he walked out to face the devil with my secret in his pocket. I laid back on the pillow. I reattached the pulse monitor. I closed my eyes. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., the hunter would become the prey. The conference room on the 3rd floor of Freeman Freight was a glass cage designed to intimidate. The air conditioning was set to a freezing 65 degrees, which kept everyone awake and uncomfortable. At the head of the mahogany table sat my son Terrence. He looked small in his leather chair. His hands were clasped in front of him, resting on a thick stack of legal documents that represented the death of his dreams. To his right sat Victoria. She was vibrating with a nervous energy that she tried to disguise as supportive concern. She kept touching Terrence's arm, smoothing his jacket, whispering in his ear. To his left was Gavin Miller, the man who had been eating at his table while poisoning his food. Gavin was checking his watch every 30 seconds. Across from them sat 3 lawyers in expensive gray suits representing Apex Solutions, the shell company that was supposedly buying the assets. They looked like vultures, waiting for the animal to stop twitching. I wasn't in the room yet. I was standing in the corridor just out of sight, adjusting my cuffs. I was not wearing my flannel shirt today. I was wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that I hadn't worn since my last federal grand jury testimony 10 years ago. It was a little tight across the shoulders, but it still commanded respect. Beside me stood Strickland, holding a leather briefcase that contained the nuclear option. We watched through the glass. The clock on the wall ticked toward 9. Terrence picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. It wasn't an act. The terror was real. Even though he knew I was coming, the pressure in that room was enough to crush a diamond. Read the indemnity clause again, Terrence said, his voice barely a whisper. Victoria let out a sharp sigh. We have read it 3 times, Terry, she said, her voice tight. It protects you. It shields you from personal liability for the debts. This is a lifeline. You have to sign it. The hard money lender is going to foreclose at noon if the funds are not wired. Do you want to lose the house too? She was good. She used his fear like a scalpel. Gavin leaned forward. Look, Terrence, we all want what is best for the company, but we are out of time. The buyers have a flight to catch. If you don't sign in the next 5 minutes, the deal is off and we go into receivership. One of the gray suits nodded, checking his phone. We have a hard stop at 9:15, Mr. Freeman. Terrence looked at the pen. He looked at Victoria. She squeezed his shoulder. Her nails dug into the fabric. Do it for us, she whispered. We can start over. We can be free. Just sign it and let's go home. Terrence looked at the door. He was waiting. He was praying. I nodded to Strickland. It is time, I said. I didn't knock. I didn't ask for permission. I pushed the double glass doors open with both hands and strode into the room. My footsteps on the hardwood floor were heavy and deliberate. Click, click, click. The sound cut through the tension like a gunshot. Heads snapped up. The gray suits frowned. Gavin looked annoyed. But Victoria looked terrified. She stared at me as if she were seeing a ghost. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She had left me in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines, drooling and helpless. She had practically pronounced me dead. And here I was, standing tall, shoulders back, eyes clear, wearing a suit that cost more than her car payments. Enoch, she gasped. She stood up, knocking her chair back. What are you doing here? You were supposed to be in the hospital. I ignored her. I walked straight to the head of the table. I stopped behind Terrence's chair. I placed one hand on his shoulder. I felt him relax instantly. He leaned back against me, drawing strength from my presence. "I am feeling much better, Victoria," I said, my voice booming off the glass walls. "It is amazing what a good night's sleep and a clear conscience can do for the Constitution." Gavin stood up, his face turning red. "Who let this man in here? Security. Get security up here now." Victoria recovered her wits. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "He is dangerous," she shouted to the lawyers. "He has dementia. He has a history of violence. I have a restraining order against him. He is violating a court order right now. Someone call the police." The lawyers looked at each other nervously. They started gathering their papers. This was messy. Corporate acquisitions hate messy. "I am calling 911, Victoria hissed, pulling out her phone. "You are going to jail, Enoch. You are going to rot in a cell." She started dialing. Her fingers were flying across the screen. "Do it," I challenged her. "Call them. But while you are on the phone, ask them to send the fraud division. I think they will want to hear about the $2 million wire transfer to Miami that happened yesterday morning." Victoria froze. Her thumb hovered over the call button. Her eyes darted to mine. She saw that I knew. She saw that I wasn't guessing. Strickland stepped forward. He placed his briefcase on the table with a heavy thud. He didn't look at Victoria or Gavin. He looked at the gray suits. "Gentlemen, my name is Horace Strickland. I am the legal counsel for Ironwood Holdings." The lead lawyer frowned. "Ironwood. They are the minority shareholder. They hold 40%. They don't have a controlling interest. This transaction is approved by the majority shareholder, Mr. Terrence Freeman." "That would be true," Strickland said, opening his briefcase, "if the company were operating under standard conditions. However, I am here to enforce Article 7, Section 4 of the corporate bylaws." Gavin laughed nervously. "Bylaws? What are you talking about? This is a done deal. Get this clown out of here." Strickland ignored him. He pulled out a thick document bound in blue legal paper. He slid it across the table toward the lawyers. "This is the original operating agreement signed 10 years ago," Strickland said. "Please turn to page 42, the silent chairman clause." The lead lawyer picked it up. He flipped the pages. He read. His eyes widened. He looked at Terrence. Then he looked at me. "This states that in the event of financial irregularity, the silent chairman assumes immediate executive control," the lawyer said. His voice was hushed. "Correct," Strickland said. "And it defines the silent chairman not as a group of investors, but as a single individual, designated by the original trust." "And who is that?" Victoria snapped. "Who cares? We have the CEO's signature on the intent to sell." The lawyer looked up from the document. He looked at me with new respect. "The silent chairman is listed here as Enoch Freeman." The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the server room down the hall. Victoria looked at me. Then she looked at Terrence. "You," she whispered. "You. But you are a truck driver. You bring him chicken. You are nobody." I leaned forward, placing my hands on the table. "I am the man who paid for the first truck," I said. "I am the man who paid for the warehouse. I am the man who has been reading your quarterly reports for 10 years and correcting your math errors in red ink before Terrence saw them." I looked at Gavin. "And I am the man who knows that Apex Solutions is registered to a mailbox in Delaware that you pay for with your personal credit card, Gavin." Gavin turned pale. He sat down heavily. "This is insane," Victoria screamed. "This is a forgery. Terrence, tell them. Tell them your father is lying. Tell them he is senile." Terrence stood up. He picked up the pen he had been holding. He looked at it for a moment. Then he snapped it in half. The plastic cracked loud and sharp. "He isn't lying, Victoria," Terrence said. His voice was steady. "He gave me the flash drive last night, in the hospital, when you were in the hallway calling your boyfriend." Victoria recoiled. "What?" "I know," Terrence said. "I know about the recordings. I know about the shell companies, and I know you think I am weak." He looked at me. "But I am not weak. I just trusted the wrong people. And now the chairman is here to correct my mistake." Strickland handed me a sheet of paper. "I hereby exercise my right of veto," I announced. "I suspend this meeting. I suspend all pending transactions. I suspend the board of directors effective immediately." The gray suits stood up. Mr. Freeman, the lead lawyer, said to me, "If there is an internal dispute regarding ownership, we cannot proceed. We are withdrawing our offer." "Wait," Victoria shouted, grabbing the lawyer's arm. "You can't leave. We have a contract." "We have nothing, ma'am," the lawyer said, shaking her off. "If this man is the chairman, your husband had no authority to negotiate this sale. This meeting is over." They walked out. The door clicked shut behind them. We were alone. Me, Strickland, Terrence, and the two thieves. Victoria stood trembling in the center of the room. Her plans were evaporating like smoke. The money was gone. The merger was gone. The narrative was gone. But she wasn't done. She was a fighter, a dirty fighter. She turned on Terrence, her face twisted into a mask of pure rage. "You idiot," she screamed. "You stupid, gullible idiot. You ruined it. We could have been rich. We could have walked away with $5 million. Terrence looked at her. He didn't flinch. "We?" I asked. "Or you?" She spun on me. "Shut up, old man," she spat. "You think you won. You didn't win anything. You just bought a sinking ship. This company is bankrupt. The accounts are empty. I drained them. And that house, it belongs to Shark Fin Capital now. You can't veto a foreclosure." I smiled. It was the smile of a wolf who has cornered a rabbit. "Actually, Victoria," I said, "I can." I pulled another document from my inside pocket. "You see, I did some research on Shark Fin Capital last night," I said. "Interesting company, registered in Florida, but the funding source traces back to a holding company in the Caymans, Island Breeze Holdings, the same company that owns Apex Solutions." Victoria went still. "You were lending Terrence his own stolen money," I said. "You stole from the company, moved it offshore, and then loaned it back to him at 18% interest to steal his house. It is a classic money laundering cycle. I saw it a dozen times in the 90s. "So what?" she said. Her chin raised defiantly. "It is legal. The loan papers are signed." "They are signed," I agreed. "But there is a problem. The source of funds for the loan is illicit proceeds from embezzlement. Under the RICO Act, that makes the loan contract void, and it makes the lender subject to asset forfeiture." I tossed the paper on the table. "I faxed this to the FBI fraud division this morning," I said, "along with the wire transfer numbers. They froze the Miami account 20 minutes ago. The money never left the country, Victoria. It is sitting in an escrow account at the Department of Justice." Gavin made a sound like a dying animal. He put his head in his hands. "It is over, Vic," he moaned. "He found it. He found everything." Victoria looked at Gavin with disgust. "Shut up, you coward," she hissed. She looked back at me. Her eyes were wild. She was calculating. She was looking for an exit. "You can't prove I knew anything," she said. "Gavin set up the accounts. Gavin signed the transfers. I am just the marketing director. I don't touch the finances. I will testify against him. I will tell them he forced me." Gavin looked up. His eyes bulged. "You witch," he shouted. "This was your idea. You said the old man was stupid. You said Terrence was a mark." "I never said that," Victoria screamed. "Yes, you did," I interrupted. I pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen. I turned the volume up to maximum. The recording from the car played, clear as a bell. "He is a mark. He is a resource. And the resource is almost dry. I will be the grieving white wife." Victoria's voice echoed off the glass walls. The racial slur, the contempt, the plan to send Terrence to prison. Terrence listened. He went pale. He looked at his wife as if she were a monster shedding its skin. "You recorded me," she whispered. "That is illegal. You can't use that." "I am not using it in court," I said. "I am playing it for my son, so he knows exactly what is sleeping in his bed." Terrence walked around the table. He stood in front of Victoria. He looked down at her. "You called me that," he said. His voice was quiet, dangerous. Victoria tried to touch him. "Terry, baby, it is out of context. He edited it." "Don't touch me," Terrence roared. He recoiled from her hand as if it were acid. "Get out," he said. "Get out of my office. Get out of my life." Victoria looked around the room. She saw the closed doors. She saw Strickland guarding the exit. She saw Gavin defeated. She saw me watching her. She straightened her jacket. She smoothed her hair. She decided to play her last card, the card of the victim. "Fine," she said coldly. "I will leave, but I am taking half. We are married, Terrence. No prenup. I own 50% of your shares. I own half the house. I own half of everything. You can fire me, but you have to pay me out. And I am going to make the divorce so expensive you will wish you had died in that hospital." She grabbed her purse. She turned to walk out. "Sit down, Mrs. Freeman," Strickland said. "I am leaving," she snapped. "I don't think so," Strickland said, pointing to the door. Through the glass we could see movement in the hallway. Blue jackets, gold badges. I had called them an hour ago. The door opened. 3 agents from the FBI Financial Crimes Division walked in. "Victoria Freeman and Gavin Miller," one of them said. "We have a warrant for your arrest." Victoria dropped her purse. Her knees buckled. She didn't fall. She just sagged as if the strings holding her up had been cut. "No," she whispered. "No." "Yes," I said. "Checkmate." The FBI agents stood by the door, silent sentinels in blue windbreakers. They did not move to cuff Victoria immediately. They seemed to understand that this was not just an arrest. This was an exorcism. I walked to the sleek touch panel on the wall that controlled the room's audiovisual system. I plugged my laptop into the HDMI port. The large 4K screen behind Terrence flickered to life. Victoria tried to look away, but she couldn't. Gavin was staring at his shoes, praying for invisibility. Terrence sat frozen, his eyes fixed on the screen, as if he were watching a car crash in slow motion. I opened the first file. It was a map, a GPS log generated from the tracker I had placed on the Porsche. "You told him you were in Aruba, Victoria," I said, my voice calm and steady. "You sent him photos of beaches and sunsets. You told him the Wi-Fi was bad, but satellites do not lie." I pointed to the screen. A bright red line traced a path through the streets of downtown Chicago. "This is your movement for the last 48 hours, I explained. "Here is the Peninsula Hotel where you slept. Here is the Aura Wellness Spa, where you spent $400 on a massage while your husband was crying in his kitchen. And here is the steakhouse, where you and Gavin celebrated the destruction of this company with a $300 bottle of Cabernet." I clicked the next slide. It was a split screen. On the left were the metadata timestamps from her Aruba photos. On the right were the timestamps from the toll booth cameras on Lakeshore Drive. At 9:02 a.m., you sent Terrence a photo of you drinking a coconut, I said. At 9:05 a.m., your car passed through the I-pass lane heading north. Unless you have mastered the art of teleportation, you were lying. Terrence stared at the map. The red lines looked like veins, the veins of his wife, his betrayal. He didn't speak. He just breathed shallow, rapid breaths. "But GPS is just geography," I said. "Let us talk about finance." I pulled up the credit card statements. These weren't her personal cards. These were the corporate expense accounts she thought were hidden under the marketing budget. "Room 402 at the Peninsula," I read aloud. 2 nights. Ordered room service. Oysters and champagne. Registered guest Victoria Freeman. Additional guest Gavin Miller. I looked at Gavin. He flinched. "You charged your affair to the company, Gavin," I said with disgust. "You stole my son's money to sleep with his wife in a 5-star hotel while he was trying to figure out how to make payroll. That is not just theft, that is depravity." Victoria stood up. Her face was pale, but her eyes were burning. "So what?" she snapped. "So I didn't go to Aruba, so I stayed in the city. Is that a crime, Enoch? Is lying to your husband a federal offense? I needed a break. I needed space. You can't send me to jail for taking a staycation." She was still trying. She was still fighting. She thought she could spin this into a marital dispute. She thought she could make this about a tired wife needing alone time. I closed the laptop lid. The screen went black. "You are right, Victoria," I said. "Lying about a vacation is not a crime, but conspiracy to commit murder is." The room went cold. Even the FBI agents shifted their stance, hands hovering near their belts. "Murder?" Victoria laughed nervously. "You are insane. Nobody died." "Not for lack of trying," I said. I took out my phone. I connected it to the Bluetooth speaker system in the ceiling. The sound quality was crystal clear. It filled every corner of the room. I played the first file. It was the recording from the hospital room. The sound of the heart monitor beeping in the background was distinct. Then came the sound of Victoria's voice, close to the microphone, intimate and cruel. "You just couldn't die, could you?" Terrence's head snapped up. He recognized the sound. It was the hospital. It was last night. By tomorrow afternoon, I will have medical power of attorney over you. And the first thing I am going to do is sign a do not resuscitate order. The voice on the recording was cold, devoid of humanity. It was the voice of a woman discussing the disposal of garbage. I am going to put you in the cheapest state-run facility I can find. A place where they smell like urine and forget to feed the patients. And you will sit there and rot. Victoria put her hands over her ears. "Turn it off," she screamed. "That is fake. You edited that." I didn't stop. I let it play. "Goodbye, Daddy." The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavy. Terrence looked at his wife. His expression was one of pure horror. He had left her alone with his father to say goodbye. He thought she was praying. Instead, she was promising to kill me. But I wasn't done. "That was for me," I said. "This next one is for you, son." I played the second file, the recording from the car, the sound of the engine humming, the turn signal clicking. He thinks we have been trying for 2 years. I got an IUD the next day. Terrence thinks I am barren. Terrence made a sound like he had been punched in the gut. He doubled over, clutching his stomach. The dream of the nursery, the names he had picked out, the fertility treatments he had researched. It was all a joke to her. He is so soft. He has no edge. He got lucky. Gavin. His laugh on the recording was sharp and mocking. In the room, real life, Gavin closed his eyes, wishing he could disappear. And then came the final blow, the part that I knew would sever the last thread of attachment my son had to this woman. You know what the worst part is? It is the smell. He smells like them. Just a dumb black boy playing dress-up in a white man's world. The slur echoed off the glass walls. It hung in the air, ugly and toxic. I stopped the recording. Terrence stood up slowly. He looked like a man who had survived a bomb blast. His suit was rumpled. His face was gray. He looked at Victoria. He didn't look at her with anger. He didn't look at her with sadness. He looked at her like she was a monster, a creature he had never seen before. "You stood in my church," Terrence whispered. "You stood in front of my grandmother. You took vows." Victoria lowered her hands. She saw the look in his eyes. She saw that the bridge was burned, the foundation was cracked, and the house was falling into the sea. There was no way back. The loving wife mask was shattered on the floor. She straightened her spine. She brushed a piece of lint off her jacket. Her face changed. The fear vanished. The panic vanished. In its place came a cold, hard arrogance. The face of the real Victoria. "Yeah, I took vows," she said. Her voice was flat, bored. "I vowed to stick around as long as it was profitable." Terrence recoiled, as if she had slapped him. "Is that all I was to you?" he asked. "A profit margin?" "You were a mark, Terrence," she said. "You were an easy mark, a boy with daddy issues and a desperate need to be loved. You made it so easy. You handed me the keys. You handed me the passwords. You practically begged me to rob you." She looked at me. She looked at the FBI agents. She looked at Strickland. Then she laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "So you caught me," she said. "Congratulations, Enoch. You played detective and you won the gold star. You have your recordings. You have your maps. You proved I am a bitch." She walked over to the window and looked out at the city skyline. "But here's the thing," she said, turning back to us, a smirk playing on her lips. "You can arrest me. You can charge me with fraud. You can drag my name through the mud. I don't care." She pointed a manicured finger at Terrence. "Because I won," she said. "The money is gone, Terrence. $12 million. It is not in Chicago. It is not in Delaware. It is in a numbered account in the Cayman Islands that you cannot touch. It is in a trust that doesn't have my name on it. By the time your lawyers figure out the jurisdiction, I will be out on bail and on a flight to a country that doesn't have an extradition treaty." She walked back to the table and picked up her purse. "I spent it," she said. "I moved it. It is mine. And there is nothing you or your little auditor daddy or the FBI can do about it. The company is empty. You are bankrupt. I am rich. That is the only score that matters." She looked at the FBI agents. "Am I under arrest?" she asked. "Or can I leave?" The lead agent stepped forward. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. The metal clicked. "Victoria Freeman, you are under arrest," he said. "Fine," she said, holding out her wrists. "Book me. My lawyer will have me out by dinner, and I will pay him with your money, Terrence." She looked at me one last time. Her eyes were cold, dead stones. "Checkmate, old man," she whispered. I looked at her. I looked at the handcuffs. I looked at my son who was broken in his chair. And then I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who has read the fine print that everyone else ignored. "You are right, Victoria," I said. "You moved the money. You signed the transfers. You emptied the accounts." I reached into my inside pocket. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It wasn't a map. It wasn't a bank statement. It was the original operating agreement for Ironwood Holdings. "But you forgot one thing," I said. "You forgot to check who actually owns the money you stole." I placed the paper on the table. "You didn't steal Terrence's money," I said, "because Terrence doesn't own the liquid assets of this company. Ironwood Holdings does." Victoria frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I am talking about the clawback protocol," I said. "And I am talking about a little trap I set 10 years ago that you just walked right into." Victoria stared at the document on the table. Her eyes scanned the text, but her brain refused to accept what she was seeing. It was a standard operating agreement, but the paragraph I had highlighted in yellow was anything but standard. "It is called the clawback protocol," I said, my voice filling the silent room. "When I funded this company 10 years ago, I knew that the biggest risk to a family business is not the market, it is the family. So I inserted Clause 14B. I walked around the table slowly. I wanted them to hear every word. Clause 14B states that all liquid assets of Freeman Freight are held in a constructive trust by Ironwood Holdings until the company remains profitable for 15 consecutive years. That means the $12 million you moved to the Cayman Islands yesterday did not belong to Terrence. It belonged to Ironwood. It belonged to me." Victoria looked up. Her face was ashen. "So what?" she spat. "It is still gone. You can sue us, but you cannot get blood from a stone." I shook my head. "You are missing the point, Victoria. Since the money belonged to a registered investment trust, and you moved it across international borders without authorization, you did not just commit embezzlement, you committed federal wire fraud against a secured financial institution. That triggers an automatic freeze of all assets associated with the signatories." I pointed to the last line of the document, and here's the best part. The clause states that, in the event of fraud by an executive or their spouse, any personal assets held by said spouse are automatically pledged as collateral to cover the loss. That includes your personal bank accounts, your jewelry, and that Porsche you love so much. Victoria dropped the paper. She looked at her hands. She had thought she was stealing from a husband she could manipulate in divorce court. Instead, she had stolen from a faceless corporate entity with a pre-signed confession of judgment. "I faxed this agreement to the Cayman Bank at 8 a.m. this morning," I continued. "They adhere to international anti-money laundering treaties. When they saw that the funds were stolen from a secured trust, they did not just freeze the account. They reversed the wire." Gavin made a choking sound. "Reversed?" he wheezed. "The money is back in the Freeman Freight operating account," I said. "All of it, minus a hefty wire transfer fee, which I will be deducting from your final paycheck, Gavin." Victoria stood frozen. The realization washed over her. She wasn't rich, she wasn't free, she was broke. She was trapped, and she was standing in a room with 3 FBI agents and the man she had tried to destroy. "It is impossible," she whispered. "You are lying. You are just a truck driver. You do not know how to structure a constructive trust." I leaned in close. "I spent 30 years auditing the smartest criminals in America, Victoria. I know more about structuring trusts than you know about breathing. You thought you were playing chess with a pigeon. You did not realize you were sitting across from the Grandmaster." The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. It was broken by a sound I did not expect. It was Gavin. He started to laugh. It was a high-pitched, hysterical giggle that sounded like glass breaking. "It is gone," he laughed. "The money is gone." He turned to look at Victoria. His eyes were wide and wet with panic. "You told me it was safe," he screamed. "You told me the old man was a vegetable. You told me we were untouchable." Victoria took a step back. "Shut up, Gavin. Don't say another word." But Gavin was past the point of silence. The reality of a federal prison sentence was crashing down on him, and like a rat on a sinking ship, he was looking for a way to climb over the other passengers. "She made me do it," Gavin shouted to the FBI agents. He pointed a shaking finger at Victoria. It was her plan. She came to me a year ago. She said her husband was weak. She said his father was senile. She said we could strip the company in 6 months and retire to the islands. "You are a liar," Victoria shrieked. She lunged at him. It happened fast. Victoria was small, but her rage gave her strength. She grabbed Gavin by the lapels of his expensive suit and slammed him against the glass wall of the conference room. "You signed the transfers," she screamed into his face. "You set up the shell companies. It is your name on the documents, Gavin. You are the CFO. It is your fiduciary duty. I am just marketing. You are going to jail, not me." Gavin shoved her back. He was sweating profusely. His face was purple. "I have the emails, Victoria," he yelled. "I kept everything. I have the emails where you told me to forge Terrence's signature. I have the texts where you told me to plant the drugs. I have the receipt for the poison you put in the old man as coffee." The room gasped. Even the FBI agents stepped forward, their hands on their holsters. "Poison," Terrence whispered. Victoria froze. She looked at Gavin with pure hatred. "You idiot," she hissed. "You shut your mouth." She tried to hit him again. She swung her hand, aiming for his eyes. Her nails were long and manicured, sharp as claws. Gavin caught her wrist. He twisted it. They grappled in the center of the room. It was a pathetic sight. Two people who had thought themselves superior, who had worn $1,000 suits and drunk champagne while destroying a family, were now fighting like animals in a cage. "Enough!" I roared. My voice stopped them. But it wasn't my voice that ended it. It was Terrence. My son stepped forward. He walked up to Gavin and Victoria, who were still clutching each other as clothes, breathing hard. Terrence didn't yell. He didn't hit them. He reached out and firmly pulled Gavin his hands off Victoria. Then he stepped between them. He looked at Gavin. "You were my friend," Terrence said. "I invited you to my house. I introduced you to my father. I trusted you with my life and work." Gavin looked down, unable to meet his eyes. "And you, Terrence," said, turning to Victoria. He looked at her for a long time. He looked at the woman he had loved, the woman he wanted to have children with, the woman he had defended against his own father. "You are nothing," he said softly. Victoria straightened her jacket. She tried to regain some of her composure. She tried to put the mask back on. "Terry, baby, listen to me," she started. "Gavin is lying. He is trying to frame me. You know I love you. We can fix this. Just tell your dad to call off the dogs." Terrence looked at me. Then he looked at the FBI agents. "Officers," he said, "please get them out of my office. They are trespassing." The lead agent nodded. He signaled to his team. They moved in with professional efficiency. 2 agents grabbed Gavin. He went limp, sobbing like a child. He babbled about a plea deal, about evidence, about knowing where the bodies were buried. The lead agent approached Victoria. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Victoria Freeman," he said, "you are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit murder, and violations of the RICO Act." Victoria pulled away. "No," she said. "No, I am not going to jail. I am Victoria Freeman. I am a victim here. My husband abused me. His father threatened me." "Turn around," the agent said firmly. He spun her around. The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound was final. Victoria struggled. She looked at Terrence. "Terry, do something," she screamed. "Do not let them take me. I am your wife." Terrence turned his back on her. He walked over to the window and looked out at the city. "Take her away," I said. The agents marched them out. Gavin was crying. Victoria was screaming obscenities, cursing me, cursing Terrence, cursing the world. The door closed. The screams faded down the hallway. The silence returned to the conference room. But this time it wasn't heavy. It was clean. Strickland began gathering the documents from the table. He closed his briefcase with a snap. "Well, Enoch," he said, "I would say that went according to plan." I looked at him. "Not quite," I said. "I hoped we wouldn't have to hear about the poison." I looked at Terrence. He was still standing by the window. His shoulders were shaking. I walked over to him. I didn't say anything. I just stood next to him. He turned to me. Tears were running down his face. "She tried to kill you, Dad," he whispered. "That heart attack, the stroke, it wasn't natural, was it?" "No, son," I said. "It wasn't." "And you knew?" Terrence asked. "You knew she was poisoning you and you still walked into this room to save me." I would walk into fire for you, son, I said. Terrence broke. He collapsed into my arms. He sobbed. He cried for the wife he lost. He cried for the betrayal. He cried for the shame of not seeing it. I held him. I patted his back just like I did when he was a boy and he scraped his knee. "It is okay," I said. "It is over." He pulled back. He wiped his face. "How did you know, Dad?" he asked. "How did you know about the poison?" I pointed to the ceiling. "I installed cameras in my kitchen last week," I lied. "I thought I had a mouse. Turns out I had a rat. I saw her switching my blood pressure medication with high-dose amphetamines 2 days ago. I didn't take them." Terrence shook his head. "I am so sorry, Dad. I was so stupid. I let her drive a wedge between us. I let her talk down to you. You were in love, son," I said. "Love makes us blind. But you are seeing clearly now." He looked around the empty conference room. "What do we do now?" he asked. "The staff is gone. The reputation is damaged. The money is back, but the trust is gone. We rebuild," I said. I looked at Strickland. "Call Mrs. Higgins," I said. "Call Marcus. Call every employee who was fired yesterday. Tell them they have their jobs back. Tell them they get a 10% raise for their trouble." Strickland nodded. "Consider it done." "And Terrence?" I said. "Yes, Dad. I think it is time we had a board meeting, just the two of us." Terrence managed a weak smile. "I think you are right, Chairman." We walked out of the conference room together. We walked past the empty cubicles. We walked past the security desk where the receptionist was staring at us with wide eyes. We walked out into the sunlight. The white Porsche was still parked in the lot. It was being loaded onto a flatbed tow truck seized as evidence. I watched it go. "Goodbye, Victoria," I thought. "Enjoy the view from your cell." I put my arm around my son. "Come on," I said. "Let's go home. I have some chicken stew that needs heating up." And for the first time in 2 years, my son didn't check his phone. He didn't look over his shoulder. He just walked with his father. We were halfway down the hallway when the shouting started. It was a desperate, animalistic sound that echoed off the tile floors of the office building. I stopped. Terrence stopped. We turned around. It was Gavin. The FBI agents were wrestling him toward the elevators, but he had planted his feet. He was sweating through his expensive suit, his face a mask of sheer terror. He looked at the lead agent, and then he looked at me. He knew that fraud was a white-collar crime. He knew he might get out in 5 or 7 years with good behavior. But he also knew that Victoria was going down for something much darker, and if he didn't distance himself from her right now, he would be an accessory to attempted murder. "I have more," Gavin screamed. "I have more evidence. I want a deal." The agent paused. He looked at Gavin with mild interest. "You can talk to the prosecutor downtown," the agent said. "No!" Gavin yelled, his eyes bulging. "You need to know now. She tried to kill him." It wasn't just the stress. It wasn't just the heart attack at the hospital. It was active poisoning. Terrence went rigid beside me. He looked at Gavin, and then he looked at Victoria, who was standing near the wall, her hands cuffed behind her back. Her face had gone chalk white. "What are you talking about?" Terrence asked, his voice trembling. "She made me buy them," Gavin babbled. He was talking fast, spitting the words out. "High-dose amphetamines, stimulants. She bought them on the dark web using the company crypto account. She told me to switch them with his blood pressure medication." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I knew she was dangerous. I knew she wanted me gone. But hearing the mechanics of it out loud was different. It made the air in the hallway feel thin. The agent signaled for his team to stop. He pulled out a notebook. "Keep talking," he said. "She went to his house last week," Gavin said. "She used the spare key you gave her, Terrence. She went into the kitchen. She emptied the capsules of his lisinopril and refilled them with the crushed amphetamines. She said his heart was weak. She said if we spiked his blood pressure enough, he would just pop. A natural cause death. No autopsy. No investigation." Victoria was shaking her head violently. "He is lying," she shrieked. "He is a drug addict. He is making it up to save himself." "I am not lying," Gavin shouted. "I have the empty bottles in my car. I kept them. I knew you would try to frame me eventually, Victoria, so I kept the insurance. The batch numbers match the order history on your laptop." Terrence looked at me. His eyes were wide with horror. "Dad," he whispered, You take lisinopril. I do, I said calmly. Did you take it this week? He asked. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a small orange prescription bottle. I rattled it. The pills inside clicked against the plastic. I didn't, I said. I walked over to the lead agent. I handed him the bottle. You will want to send these to the lab, I said. I think you will find Gavin is telling the truth. The agent took the bottle. He bagged it as evidence. How did you know? Terrence asked me. I told you, son, I said. I installed cameras in my kitchen. I saw her do it. I pulled out my phone. I opened the app linked to my home security system. I found the clip from 3 days ago. I hit play and held the screen up for Terrence to see. The video was grainy but undeniable. It showed Victoria standing at my kitchen counter. She was wearing gloves. She was carefully opening my medication bottles, dumping the powder, and refilling them with a white substance from a Ziploc bag. She looked focused. She looked calm. She looked like a woman preparing a meal, not a murder weapon. Terrence watched the video. He watched his wife poisoning his father. He made a sound that I will never forget. It was a sound of pure agony, a sound of a man realizing that the person he slept next to was not human. That is conspiracy to commit murder, the agent said, looking at Victoria. That is 25 to life, Mrs. Freeman. Victoria looked at the agent. Then she looked at the video. She saw the walls closing in. She saw the prison cell. She saw the end of her life. And in that moment, she broke. The arrogant executive vanished. The cold predator vanished. What was left was a cornered rat willing to say anything, do anything to survive. She threw herself toward Terrence. She fell to her knees, her cuffed hands awkward behind her back. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. Terry, please, she sobbed. You have to stop them. You can't let them take me. Terrence looked down at her. He didn't move to help her up. He just stared at her with a look of revulsion. You tried to kill my father, he said, his voice flat. I didn't mean to, she cried. I was confused. I was stressed. Gavin made me think it was the only way. I wasn't thinking clearly, Terry. It was the hormones. Hormones? Terrence asked. Victoria looked up at him. She widened her eyes, trying to summon the look of the innocent girl he had married. Yes, baby, the hormones, she said. I didn't want to tell you like this. I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted to tell you in Aruba. She took a deep breath. She paused for dramatic effect. I am pregnant, Terry. The hallway went silent. The FBI agents exchanged glances. Gavin rolled his eyes and scoffed, but he didn't say anything. I looked at Terrence. He had frozen. The color drained from his face. His hand went to his stomach as if he had been kicked. Pregnant? He whispered. Yes, Victoria said, nodding frantically. We are having a baby, a little boy. I just found out last week. That is why I was so crazy. That is why I made bad decisions. I was terrified about our future. I just wanted to secure a life for our son. She was good. I had to give her that. She was a master. She knew exactly where to hit him. She knew that Terrence wanted a child more than breath itself. She knew that the idea of sending the mother of his unborn child to prison would break him. Please, Terry, she begged, don't let our baby be born in jail. I will give the money back. I will sign whatever you want. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you don't want to press charges. Do it for our family. Terrence looked at her belly. He looked at her tear-stained face. I saw the conflict in his eyes. I saw the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, this part was true. I stepped forward. I placed a hand on Terrence's arm. Son, I said gently. He looked at me. His eyes were pleading. Dad, what if she is telling the truth? He whispered. What if there is a baby? She isn't telling the truth, Terrence, I said. How do you know? Victoria screamed. You don't know my body. You don't know anything. I know because I read the medical file you tried to delete from the cloud, I said. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. I pulled out a folded sheaf of papers. I had found them the night I raided the digital archives of her shell companies. She had stored her personal records in the same encrypted folder as the bank transfers. Arrogance makes people lazy. I handed the papers to Terrence. Read the date, son, I said. Read the procedure. Terrence took the papers. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. He focused on the top page. It was a discharge summary from a private clinic in Highland Park. Patient name, Victoria Freeman, he read aloud. Date of procedure, November 12th, 2020. He looked up. That was 3 years ago, he said. Keep reading, I said. Procedure type. Bilateral tubal ligation via laparoscopy, he read. Notes. Procedure successful. Permanent sterilization confirmed. Patient advised that natural conception is no longer possible. Terrence stopped. He read the line again. Permanent sterilization. He looked at the date. It was 3 months before their wedding. 3 months before she stood at the altar and promised to build a family with him. She had lied from the very beginning. Every month, she pretended to cry over a negative pregnancy test was a lie. Every time she talked about baby names was a lie. Every hope she had given him was a calculated cruelty designed to keep him compliant. Victoria stopped crying. She saw the paper in his hand. She saw the look on his face. She knew the game was over. It was a medical necessity, she stammered. I had cysts, the doctor said. The doctor said it was an elective procedure. Terrence read from the page. Patient requested permanent birth control measures. No pathology found. He lowered the paper. He looked at her. You let me build a nursery, he said. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried more weight than a scream. You let me buy a crib. You let me pray for a child that you made sure would never exist. Terry, listen, she started. No, Terrence said. He dropped the papers. They fluttered to the floor, landing next to her knees. You aren't pregnant, Victoria, he said. You were just cancer. He looked at the agents. Get her out of here, he said. I don't want to see her again. The agents grabbed Victoria by the arms. They hauled her to her feet. She started screaming then. Not words of apology, not pleas for mercy, just raw, hateful screeching. I hate you, she screamed at Terrence. I hate you and your stupid father and your pathetic little company. You are weak. You are nothing without me. They dragged her down the hall. Her heels scraped against the floor. Gavin walked ahead of her, head bowed, defeated. We stood there in the hallway. The silence returned. It was a heavy silence, but it was clean. The poison was gone. Terrence looked at the empty elevator. He looked at the floor where the medical records lay. He sank down. He sat on the floor, his back against the wall. He put his head in his hands. I sat down next to him. I didn't care about my suit. I didn't care about my dignity. I was just a father sitting with his son in the wreckage of a storm. It is over, son, I said. He nodded against his hands. She never loved me, did she? He asked. Not even for a minute. I don't think she knows how to love Terrence, I said. People like that, they only know how to feed. They are empty inside. He looked at me. His eyes were red and swollen. I am sorry, Dad, he said. I almost let her kill you. I defended her while she was poisoning you. You didn't know, I said. I should have known, he said. I should have seen it. We see what we want to see, I said. You wanted to see a future. She used that against you. That is not your fault. That is her crime. He took a deep breath. He wiped his face with his sleeve. What do we do now? He asked. The house is mortgaged. The staff is fired. The reputation of the company is in the toilet. We rebuild, I said. We start from scratch if we have to, but we do it together this time. No secrets, no silent partners, just Freeman and Son. Or father and son, he corrected with a weak smile. I laughed. It was a relief to laugh. Father and son, sounds good, I said. I stood up. My knees popped. I offered him my hand. Come on, Terrence, I said. Let's go home. He took my hand. His grip was strong. He pulled himself up. He dusted off his pants. He looked down the hallway one last time. Goodbye, Victoria, he said softly. Then he turned to me. Dad, he said. Yes, son. Can I drive the truck? He asked. I smiled. Only if you don't scratch the paint, I said. We walked to the elevator. The doors opened. We stepped inside. As the doors closed, I looked at my reflection in the polished metal. I saw an old man in a suit, but I also saw a father who had done his job. I had saved him. It had cost me my retirement. It had almost cost me my life, but I had saved him. And that was the only audit that mattered. The ride back to Terrence's house was quiet. The adrenaline that had fueled us through the confrontation in the boardroom was fading, replaced by a dull, aching exhaustion. I drove my old Ford truck, the engine humming a familiar tune that usually brought me peace, but today it sounded like a dirge. Terrence stared out the passenger window, watching the city blur by. He had loosened his tie and unbuttoned his collar, but he still looked like a man who was suffocating. We pulled into the driveway of the house on Oakwood Lane. It was a beautiful house, a sprawling colonial with a manicured lawn and a big oak tree in the front yard. I remembered the day I signed the deed over to him. I remembered the pride in his eyes. He had wanted this house to be a sanctuary, a place to raise the family he thought he was building. Now, it was a crime scene. Terrence got out of the truck. He walked to the front door with heavy steps. He fumbled with his keys. His hands were still shaking. He unlocked the door and pushed it open. He froze on the threshold. I walked up behind him and looked over his shoulder. The house was empty. It wasn't just that she had left. It was that she had erased herself and taken the house with her. The living room furniture was gone. The Italian leather sectional, the 60-inch television, the Persian rugs, even the curtains were gone. The room was a hollow box of hardwood floors and echoes. She must have had a moving truck here yesterday while Terrence was at work, or at the hospital. She had liquidated his home before she even tried to liquidate his company. Terrence stepped inside. His footsteps echoed loudly. He walked to the center of the living room and turned in a slow circle. "She took the art," he whispered. I looked at the walls. There were pale squares where paintings used to hang. She had stripped the place to the studs. He walked into the kitchen. The high-end appliances were still there, probably because they were too heavy to move quickly. But the counters were bare. The espresso machine, the mixer, the imported knife block, all gone. She left a single mug on the counter. It was a cheap promotional mug from a gas station. It was a final insult. She left him the trash. Terrence walked down the hall to the master bedroom. I followed him. The bed was gone. The mattress, the frame, the headboard, all of it. Terrence stood in the middle of the empty room, staring at the indentations in the carpet where his marriage bed used to be. He looked at the closet. The doors were open. Her side was empty, naturally, but his side was empty too. "She took my suits," he said, his voice trembling. "She took my watches. She took my shoes." He turned to me. His eyes were wide and wet. "She left me with nothing, Dad. She didn't just leave. She looted me." He sank down. He didn't sit. He collapsed. He slid down the wall until he hit the floor, and then he pulled his knees to his chest. He buried his face in his hands, and he began to cry. It wasn't the quiet weeping of a man trying to save face. It was the guttural sobbing of a soul that has been ripped open. He cried for the betrayal. He cried for the humiliation. He cried for the child that never existed. He cried for the house that was no longer a home. I stood there and watched him. My heart was breaking, but I knew he needed to do this. He needed to bleed the poison out. If he bottled this up, it would kill him later. I walked out of the room. I went to the kitchen. I opened the pantry. It was mostly empty, but on the top shelf, pushed all the way to the back, I found a bottle of whiskey. It was a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle I had given him 5 years ago when he landed his first major contract. Victoria probably didn't know what it was worth, or she would have taken it too. I grabbed 2 red plastic cups from a stack left on the counter. That was all we had. I poured a generous amount into each cup. No ice, no water, just the heat. I walked back to the bedroom. I sat down on the floor next to my son. The carpet was rough under my hands. "Here," I said, holding out the cup. Terrence lifted his head. His face was a mess of tears and snot. He looked like a little boy again. He looked at the cup. "I don't want to drink, Dad," he choked out. "You aren't drinking to forget," I said. "You are drinking to cauterize the wound. Take it." He took the cup. His hand shook so much a little amber liquid splashed onto his shirt. He took a sip. He coughed as it burned his throat. I sat back against the wall and stretched my legs out. "She beat me, Dad," Terrence whispered. "I let her in. I gave her everything. I thought she was the prize. I thought I was lucky. You were lonely," I said. "I was stupid," he corrected bitterly. "I was a fool. You heard what she said in the car. She called me a mark. She called me—" He couldn't say the word. The slur she used. It hung in the air between us. "She saw what she wanted to see," I said. "She saw a man with a big heart and she mistook it for weakness. That is her failure, not yours." "How did you see it?" he asked, turning to look at me. "How did you know from the beginning? You never liked her." "I didn't like how she looked at the waiter," I said, taking a sip of my drink. On your first date, you brought her to the house. We ordered food. When the delivery boy came, she didn't look him in the eye. She took the bag and closed the door without saying thank you. You can tell everything about a person by how they treat people who can do nothing for them. Terrence nodded slowly. I remember that. I thought she was just shy. You thought she was shy because she was beautiful, I said. You wanted her to be good, so you ignored the evidence that she wasn't. We all do it, son. I did it with my first business partner. He stole $10,000 from me in '82. I didn't see it coming because I liked his jokes. You never told me that, Terrence said. I don't tell you a lot of things, I said. I wanted you to think I was Superman. But Superman is a comic book. I am just a man who learned how to read the fine print. Terrence took a larger swallow of the whiskey. The alcohol was starting to hit his system, loosening the knot in his chest. I feel so ashamed, Dad, he confessed. I walked into that office every day thinking I was the boss, thinking I was building an empire, and the whole time they were laughing at me, Gavin and Victoria. They were spending my money and laughing at my accent. They aren't laughing now, I said. They are sitting in a federal holding cell being processed. They are trading their designer suits for orange jumpsuits. They are realizing that the mark was smarter than they were. You were smarter, Terrence said. Not me. I was the mark. You are the CEO, I said firmly. You built the logistics network. You designed the routing software. You landed the Amazon contract. I provided the capital, Terrence, but you did the work. Do not let her take that from you. She stole your money. She stole your furniture. Do not let her steal your accomplishments. Terrence looked around the empty room. How do I come back from this? He asked. The house is empty. The bank accounts are frozen while the FBI investigates. I don't even have a bed to sleep in tonight. You sleep at my house, I said. Your old room is exactly how you left it, and tomorrow we start cleaning up. I finished my drink. I crumpled the plastic cup. Get up, son, I said. Terrence hesitated. Then he pushed himself up. He swayed a little, but he stood. We walked out of the house. He locked the front door. It seemed pointless to lock an empty house, but it was a symbolic act. He was closing the door on the life he thought he had. We got into my truck. We drove to my small house in the suburbs. I heated up the chicken stew. We ate at my small kitchen table in silence. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the silence of two soldiers after a battle. Terrence slept for 12 hours. He didn't move. He didn't dream. His body simply shut down to repair itself. The next morning, Saturday, I woke him up at 6 a.m. with a cup of strong black coffee. Get dressed, I said. We are going to the office. But it is Saturday, he groaned, rubbing his eyes. Crime doesn't take the weekend off and neither does recovery, I said. We have a forensic audit to conduct, and you were going to learn how to do it. We drove to the office. The yellow police tape had been removed from the conference room door, but the ghost of the arrest still hung in the air. I sat Terrence down at his desk. I pulled up a chair next to him. Open the books, I said. He logged into the accounting server. For the next 10 hours, I didn't treat him like my son. I treated him like a junior auditor. I taught him how to trace a shell company. I taught him how to spot a phantom vendor. I showed him how Gavin had manipulated the EBITDA to hide the losses. Look here, I said, pointing to a spreadsheet. See this recurring payment for IT consulting. It is $4,000 a month. Now look at the invoice. It looks standard, Terrence said. Look at the font, I said. The 0 in the invoice number is different from the 0 in the date. This was edited in Photoshop. And look at the address. It is a residential house in Gary, Indiana. Who lives there? Terrence ran a search. Gavin, his cousin, he realized. Exactly, I said. He was funneling $48,000 a year to his cousin for doing nothing. And you signed the checks. I didn't check, Terrence admitted. I just trusted him. Trust is good, I said. Verification is better. From now on, you sign nothing until you verify the vendor exists. We went through everything. We found the travel expenses Victoria had charged for client meetings that never happened. We found the petty cash withdrawals. We found the inflated supply costs. It was painful for him. Every discovered theft was a reminder of his blindness, but it was also empowering. He was seeing the machinery of the deception. He was understanding how it worked. He was taking his power back. By Sunday evening, we had a complete picture of the damage. It was bad, but it wasn't fatal. The clawback of the Cayman funds had saved the company from insolvency. We had enough to make payroll. We had enough to keep the trucks running. We sat in the office eating pizza from a box. The sun was setting over Chicago, painting the skyline in gold and purple. "Dad," Terrence said, wiping tomato sauce from his lip. "Yeah. You know that Clause 14B, the silent chairman clause?" I nodded. "What about it? Did you really put that in there 10 years ago because you thought I would fail?" I looked at him. I saw the man he was becoming, stronger, wiser, scared, scarred, but standing. "I didn't put it there because I thought you would fail," I said. "I put it there because I knew the world is full of wolves, and I knew that you have a sheep's heart. That is your greatest strength, Terrence, your kindness, your ability to inspire loyalty. But a sheep needs a sheepdog, so you are the sheepdog," he smiled. "I am the sheepdog," I agreed. "I sit on the hill and I watch, and if a wolf comes, I bite." Terrence laughed. It was a real laugh, the first one I had heard in a long time. "You definitely bite," he said. "You took down 3 FBI agents and a CEO with a flash drive and a bad attitude." I took a bite of pizza. "Don't forget the chicken stew," I said. "That is the source of my power." Terrence looked at the empty office. "I am going to sell the house," he said. "I can't live there. Too many ghosts." "That is a good idea," I said. "Get a condo in the city, something smaller, something just for you." "I think I will," he said. "And Dad?" "Yeah, thank you. For saving me, for teaching me, for not saying I told you so." "I haven't said it yet," I teased. "Give me time." We packed up the files. We turned off the lights. As we walked out to the parking lot, I looked at my son. He walked differently now. His stride was longer. His head was up. He wasn't the boy who needed validation from a wife who hated him. He was the CEO of Freeman Freight, and I was just Enoch, the guy with the truck. But as he opened the passenger door for me, a gesture of respect he hadn't shown in years, I knew that the dynamic had shifted. We weren't just father and son anymore. We were partners, and God help anyone who tried to mess with the Freeman family again. The federal courthouse in Chicago is a building designed to make you feel small. It is a monolith of glass and steel that reflects the city skyline and swallows the lives of the people who walk through its doors. I sat in the back row of courtroom 14B, wearing my charcoal suit for the last time. Next to me sat Terrence. He was calm. He sat with his hands folded in his lap and his back straight. He did not look like a victim anymore. He looked like a man who had walked through fire and come out made of steel. At the defense table, Victoria and Gavin sat as far apart as possible. They were wearing orange jumpsuits now. The designer suits and the silk blouses were gone, replaced by the uniform of the state. They looked smaller. Without their money and their arrogance, they were just 2 frightened people facing the consequences of their own greed. The judge was a woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen every lie a criminal could tell. She adjusted her glasses and looked down at the defendants. She did not look sympathetic. "Victoria Freeman and Gavin Miller, you have been found guilty of wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, and violations of the RICO Act. The evidence against you is overwhelming. You preyed on a family. You attempted to destroy a business, and most heinously, you attempted to end a human life for financial gain." Victoria started to sob. It wasn't the manipulative crying I had seen before. This was the raw, ugly crying of a woman who knows there is no way out. "Your Honor, please," she wailed. "I was coerced. I have a medical condition." The judge banged her gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. "Silence," the judge ordered. "I have read your files, Mrs. Freeman. I have seen the videos of you poisoning your father-in-law's medication. I have read the transcripts of you mocking your husband. There is no coercion here. There is only malice." She looked at Gavin. "And you, Mr. Miller, you violated your fiduciary duty. You betrayed a friend. You are a coward who hid behind a woman while you stole from the hand that fed you." Gavin hung his head. He didn't say a word. He knew it was over. "I sentence you both to 15 years in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole," the judge declared. "You will also be required to pay full restitution to Freeman Freight and to Enoch Freeman. Court is adjourned." The gavel struck again. 15 years. They would be 50 years old when they got out. Their youth, their beauty, their potential, it was all gone. Wasted on a scheme that failed because they underestimated a truck driver. The marshals moved in. They pulled Victoria to her feet. She struggled. She turned her head and locked eyes with Terrence. "Terry," she screamed. Terry, please, don't let them take me. I am sorry. I love you. Terrence stood up. He looked at her. He didn't look angry. He didn't look sad. He looked at her the way you look at a stranger you pass on the street. He didn't say anything. He just turned his back on her and walked toward the exit. Victoria screamed his name one last time before the heavy wooden doors cut off her voice. We walked out of the courthouse and into the cold Chicago wind. The sun was shining, but it didn't offer much heat. It didn't matter. We generated our own warmth. Is it done? Terrence asked. It is done, I said. They are gone, son. You never have to think about them again. Terrence took a deep breath. He filled his lungs with the city air. I feel lighter, he said, like gravity just let go of me. That is freedom, son, I said. He looked at me and smiled. Come on, Dad. I have a company to run. And I think we are overdue for a quarterly review. We got into my truck and drove away, leaving the courthouse and the ghosts of the past in the rearview mirror. 1 year is a long time in the logistics business. A lot can happen in 12 months. Markets shift, fuel prices rise and fall, and companies either adapt or they die. Freeman Freight didn't just adapt, it evolved. I sat in the corner of the new office break room, watching my son work. We had moved out of the old building. Too many bad memories. We were now in a modern facility near O'Hare Airport, closer to the cargo hubs. The walls were glass, but this time there were no secrets behind them. Terrence was standing at a whiteboard, leading a team meeting. He looked different. The softness was gone, replaced by a quiet authority. He didn't wear three-piece suits anymore. He wore dress shirts with the sleeves rolled up, ready to work. He knew every number on that board. He checked every invoice. He verified every vendor. He had learned the hard way that trust is good, but verification is survival. We had rebuilt the staff. Mrs. Higgins was back as the head of accounting, running a tight ship. Marcus was the VP of operations. The culture of the company had changed. It wasn't about flash anymore. It was about family. Terrence finished the meeting and walked over to me. Ready for lunch, Chairman? He asked with a grin. I am always ready, I said. We walked out to the parking lot. But we weren't going to a restaurant. We were going to his new house. He had sold the mansion on Oakwood Lane. He said it felt like a museum of his mistakes. He bought a smaller place, a renovated brownstone in a quiet neighborhood. It was cozy. It was warm. It felt like a home. But the best part of the new house wasn't the architecture. It was the person waiting inside. We walked through the front door, and the smell of roasted garlic and rosemary hit us. Maya walked out of the kitchen wiping her hands on an apron. She was beautiful in a way Victoria never was. She didn't wear designer clothes. She wore jeans and a sweater. She didn't have heavy makeup. She had a smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. She was a third-grade teacher at the local elementary school. Terrence had met her at a coffee shop 6 months ago. He didn't try to impress her with his money. He didn't tell her he was a CEO. He told her he worked in shipping. She liked him for his laugh, not his portfolio. Hey, you two, she said, giving Terrence a quick kiss. Lunch is almost ready. I hope you are hungry, Enoch. Starving, I said. She looked me in the eye when she spoke to me. She asked me how my fishing was. She asked about my truck. She treated me like a person, not an accessory. I watched them together as we ate. There was no performance. There was no tension. When Terrence spoke, she listened. When she spoke, he looked at her with genuine adoration, not the desperate need for validation he used to have. They laughed about a movie they had seen. They talked about her students. They talked about his trucks. It was boring, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. After lunch, Terrence and I sat on the back porch drinking iced tea. She is a good woman, son, I said. She is, Terrence agreed. She knows everything, Dad. I told her about Victoria. I told her about the money. I told her about you saving me. And what did she say? I asked. She said you sound like a superhero, Terrence laughed. She wants to know if you have a cape hidden in your truck. No cape, I said. Just a tire iron and a laptop. Terrence looked at me. His expression turned serious. I checked the books this morning, Dad, he said. We are up 20% this quarter. The debt from the hard money loan is almost paid off, thanks to the clawback funds. We are free and clear. That is good work, son, I said. It is your company too, Terrence said. You know you can take the money out if you want. You can buy a boat. You can travel. I shook my head. I am happy right where I am. The money stays in the trust. It is for the next generation. Maybe one day you will have a reason to use it for college tuition. Terrence smiled. He looked at Maya through the kitchen window. Maybe, he said, but this time we are going to do it right. No rush, no pressure, just life. I finished my tea. I stood up. I am going to head out, son. The fish are biting at the lake, and I have a date with a largemouth bass. Terrence stood up and hugged me. It was a strong hug. A man is hug. I love you, Dad, he said. I love you too, son. I walked to my truck. I climbed into the cab and started the engine. It coughed a little before roaring to life. I patted the dashboard. She still runs good, I muttered. I drove out of the city toward the lake. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the highway. I rolled the window down and let the wind hit my face. People look at me when I drive this truck. They see an old black man in a flannel shirt. They see the rust on the fenders. They see the dent in the bumper. They think they know my story. They think I am just scraping by. They think I am powerless. Let them think that. They don't know about the millions in the Nevada Trust. They don't know that I own 40% of one of the fastest-growing logistics companies in the Midwest. They don't know that I took down a ring of corporate fraudsters without firing a single shot. I don't need them to know. Real power doesn't need a parade. Real power is having the ability to protect the people you love when the wolves come knocking. Real power is silence. I parked the truck by the water. I grabbed my fishing pole and my tackle box. I walked down to the pier. The water was calm. The city skyline was a distant silhouette on the horizon. I cast my line. The lure hit the water with a soft splash. I thought about Victoria sitting in her cell. I thought about Gavin. I thought about the life they tried to steal and the life they lost. They wanted to be rich. They wanted to be seen. I just wanted to be a father. And as I sat there, watching the bobber dance on the surface of the water, I realized that I was the richest man in the world. My son was safe. My conscience was clear. And I had a whole pot of chicken stew waiting for me at home. This is Enoch Freeman signing off. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And remember, family is not just about blood. It is about who stands beside you when the storm comes. Stay safe out there, and always read the fine print. This ordeal taught me that the most dangerous threats often hide behind a smile and a wedding ring. We want to believe that family is sacred, but I learned that true family is defined by loyalty, not just a marriage certificate. My son learned the hard way that love should never require you to sacrifice your dignity or your gut instincts. Trust is a beautiful thing, but without verification, it is just a blindfold. Real power isn't about the noise you make or the car you drive. It is about having the courage to stand in the shadows and protect what is yours when the wolves come knocking. If you believe in standing up for your family, no matter the cost, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice. Tell me in the comments below, would you have forgiven your son as quickly as I did? I read every single one.